Chapter 1667. Another crucial point was that the Dharma Supreme was so familiar with his killer move, the Tribulation Sword technique. It could be said that he knew himself and his enemy. However, he only knew himself and did not know his enemy. He could only rely on brute force. The only advantage he had was the Tribulation Sword. However, this advantage was obviously not very useful to the Dharma Supreme. The Dharma Supreme, who was also familiar with the sharpness of the Tribulation Sword, would definitely not be so stupid as to go head-on against Chu Yang's divine sword. Chu Yang frowned and walked out of the room. He came to a room and knocked on the door. The door opened. Yu Lingxue appeared in front of the door. "Sword Master Chu? You're here." Chu Yang smiled and flashed into the room. Feng Yuro was in the room, looking out the window with a worried expression. When she saw Chu Yang enter, she quickly got up to welcome him. Chu Yang did not waste any more words. He simply took out 2 big jade bottles and placed them on the table. "Elder Yu, this is the spring of life. And it's a fully matured spring of life." Chu Yang smiled and said, "Speaking of which, this matter has been on my mind for a very long time. Finally, when I obtained the 8th fragment of the Tribulation Sword, I managed to catalyze the spring of life by chance. This can be considered as settling one of my worries." "Spring of life? It's really the spring of life?" Feng Yuro turned around abruptly. Looking at the 2 jade bottles on the table, she actually felt that it was unreal. The 2 of them had been cultivating the Moon Breeze dual cultivation technique for a long time. All this time, they had been unable to break through the bottleneck. As a result, all the blood in their bodies had been converted into cultivation. As a result, they had lost the opportunity to have children. The couple had been brooding over this matter for 10,000 years, and the only hope to break through this obstacle was the legendary Spring of Life. However, legend had it that the Spring of Life was a sacred item of the fairy race. The fairy race had long disappeared in the long river of history. The 2 of them had long given up hope, until they discovered by chance that Chu Yang actually had the spiritual spring. Only then did they have some hope. But it was only hope. Although the spiritual spring and the spring of life only had a difference of 1 word, their effects were worlds apart. Even after tens of thousands of years, it might not evolve into the spring of life. But he really didn't expect that Chu Yang would bring over the spring of life after only a year. "Is it really the spring of life?" Yu Lingxue also became excited. He rushed over and almost collided with his wife. When the bottle was opened, a dazzling glow similar to that of moonlight emerged. A refreshing and elegant fragrance slowly diffused into the air. The moment they smelled this fragrance, they instantly felt their bodies relax. It was as if every single cell in their bodies was cheering and increasing their vitality. It really is the spring of life. Feng Yuro was so excited that her voice was trembling, and her pretty face was flushed red. He raised his head and looked at Chu Yang gratefully. "Chu Yang, thank you very much. The Yu clan is finally going to have an heir." Chu Yang coughed a few times and felt that his face was a little red, but it was because of embarrassment. Although a certain king of hell's skin was thick, he still blushed at this moment. "It seems like this Yu family's offspring is a matter between you two. You two can discuss it yourselves. I really couldn't handle it if he said it to me so directly. This thing had nothing to do with me, right? If it did have anything to do with me, then it would be better if it didn't. What kind of person have I become? I only provided a bit of spring water, nothing else." "Yes, yes." Yu Lingxue also held Chu Yang's hand excitedly and shook it forcefully. He was actually a little incoherent and his handsome face was also flushed red. "The Yu clan finally has an heir. Chu Yang, thank you very much for your help this time. Your great help. Our Yu clan's ancestors will also thank you." Chu Yang was speechless. What's wrong with these 2 people? They were usually quite serious, but why were they speaking so incoherently now? "What are you talking about over there?" Feng Yuro finally realized her husband's faulty wording. She pinched Yu Lingxue's waist fiercely, her face flushed red and she was extremely embarrassed. "You fool, you're still so foolish after more than 10,000 years. Yu Lingxue laughed foolishly, and then his face twisted in pain. He hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. Yes, it wasn't Chu Yang who helped. Chu Yang didn't help at all. It was me. It was myself. Obviously, this person was so happy that he became silly. Just now, he was just speaking incoherently, but now, he was just babbling nonsense. Chu Yang was dumbfounded. On the other side, Foam Euro couldn't help but feel ashamed. Then, she suddenly exploded. With a bang, she knocked her husband down to the ground. Then, with a whoosh, she entered the inner room. Chu Yang continued to be dumbfounded. Foam Euro came out with a red face and an extremely embarrassed look on her face. She carried the 2 bottles of Spring of Life into the room and closed the door with a bang. She didn't come out again. It was still very obvious that this woman was driven mad by Yu Lingxue, this fool. The more she spoke, the more outrageous, the more incoherently, the more embarrassing, the more Rayo. Yu Lingxue held his thigh, his face twitching a little. There was also some uncontrollable excitement. He said to Chu Yang, "This time, it's really all thanks to you. If it wasn't for you, our Yu clan wouldn't have the incense lamps." Chu Yang was dumbfounded, and his mouth was agape and his tongue was tied. Suddenly, he felt that whatever he said was inappropriate. What kind of person was this? What kind of words were these? Why did they sound so ambiguous? It was already very ambiguous before, but now it seemed to be even more. In the end, he had no choice but to say very pathetically, "That's what I should do." "It's nothing." "Since that's the case, then, are you guys busy? I'll go out first. I won't disturb you guys." After saying that, he felt that there was something wrong with his words. He was about to step back with his head full of sweat. Yu Lingxue still didn't realize what was going on. He said excitedly, Okay, we'll be busy for a while." "I'll go and busy for a while." "No. Why don't you sit for a while more?" Chu Yang stepped back with his face full of sweat. If he continued to sit, would he want to die? Even if he didn't want his own life, he had to take someone's life. It was more important to leave quickly. Just as he stepped out, he heard a soft moan from inside. Then, the door closed with a bang, almost squeezing Chu Yang's straight nose inside. A certain king of hell stepped back quickly, but he still felt the wind from the door blowing against his face. Even his hair fluttered backward. He thought to himself that it was a close call. Then, he heard the sound of punching and kicking inside, as well as embarrassed and angry scolding. "You idiot! How am I going to face people in the future? Oh. What's wrong with me? I'm just happy. You. You're really going to piss me off, but you can't. Hurry up and block the sound." Yes. I'm so pissed off, I forgot everything." Then, Chu Yang couldn't hear anything else. 2 extraordinarily powerful supreme martial artists' divine senses completely sealed the room. Even the current Dharma Supreme might not be able to pry into the space sealed by the 2 of them, let alone a certain king of hell. A certain king of hell was at most a little thick-skinned, but he didn't have the hobby of eavesdropping on the private matters of a married couple. Chu Yang rubbed his head and walked out with lingering fear. There were already a few heads poking out from several rooms. What's going on? Why did such powerful supreme martial artists' divine senses suddenly appear? Could it be those 2 experts sparring? What's going on? "Boss, why are you here? What happened?" "Yeah, what's wrong?" Chu Yang hurriedly explained with a head full of sweat. "Well, the Moon Breeze couple is very busy, please don't disturb them." With that, he left. Halfway through, he couldn't help but pat himself. "You just said not to disturb them, why did you say they were very busy?" "Busy? Busy with what?" Jimo scratched his head, a look of suspicion on his face. "It's not the time to be busy yet." "So?" Luo Kedi looked puzzled. "The battle hasn't started yet, what can they be busy with?" "That's right." Xie Danqiong pondered. "I can't think of what they can be busy with either. Could it be some new way of fighting, looking at the divine senses entanglement just now, or maybe they're sparring? Maybe, they're studying how to fight in depth." Listening to the various guesses behind, there were actually some that were very close to the correct answer, as if they were really sparring. Minister Chu went upstairs with a whoosh. What everyone said was very normal. But why did Chu Yang feel that he was evil? Why did it feel like there was another meaning? After returning to his room, Chu Yang immediately entered the tribulation space. The matter of Yu Lingxue and his wife had always been a sore point for Chu Yang. With Chu Yang's temper, unless he didn't agree to it, as long as he agreed to it, he would definitely do it. If he couldn't do it, he would always keep it in his heart and take it to heart. Now that he had finally resolved this matter, Chu Yang also heaved a sigh of relief. Seeing Yu Lingxue and his wife so excited that they were incoherent, Chu Yang also felt happy in his heart. Next, he naturally busied himself with improving his cultivation. To improve his cultivation, finding help was the most important thing. To find help, he also had to find someone who understood. The person that Chu Yang knew the most was naturally none other than the great Sword Spirit. Sword Spirit, I need to quickly improve my strength now. What suggestions do you have? After Chu Yang went in, he asked very straightforwardly and cleanly. The Sword Spirit, who was still in a weakened state after the battle with the Dharma Supreme, rolled his eyes and said, "Quickly improve your strength. Taking heavy pills won't do. You still need to ask me about this." Chu Yang bared his teeth and said, "Of course there's a reason for asking you. Although heavy pills are amazing, their healing effect is indeed the greatest. As for improving cultivation, at the level of a second-grade supreme martial artist, the effect isn't very great. So, it seems that taking heavy pills still won't be able to catch up with the progress I need. Is there a better medicine or method?" Chapter 1668. Chu Yang pursed his lips. "Do you think I want to? Who asked that damned Dharma Supreme to raise his strength to such an inhumane level? If we don't think of ways to raise our strength, are we just going to wait for death on the day of the final battle? Hurry up. Is there a shortcut for you to level up quickly?" The Sword Spirit pondered for a moment. Then, he said, "The heavy pill is the most perfect medicine under the heavenly layer. It's impossible to find a more effective way to improve without any side effects. Even if there is, it's beyond the scope of the heavenly layer. So, it's not suitable for the present." Chu Yang was a little dumbfounded. "What do you mean? Is there no other way? Why did you drop the ball at such a crucial moment?" The Sword Spirit continued, "Don't be anxious. Novel chapters are updated the fastest. However, you can put more effort into the heavy pills. Back then, the medicinal herbs from the imperial court that Lord Z left behind, as well as the heavenly and earthly treasures from the other planes, should be able to achieve better results than ordinary heavy pills if they are combined properly." Chu Yang said, "In other words, a super version that surpasses the complete version? How much can it improve?" The Sword Spirit pondered for a moment and said, "To tell you the truth, the heavy pill's greatest effect is to revive the soul, extend the life, bring the dead back to life, heal injuries, improve one's physique, and increase one's natural endowments. However, the effect of raising one's cultivation isn't very ideal. If we can improve it and fuse it with the huge medicinal strength, we can create a heavy pill that's specifically for raising one's cultivation. For example, the super heavy pill that we refined for Lord Z previously, if we make some improvements, the highest effect should be able to raise one's cultivation by at least 100 years. Cultivation was also divided into different levels. For example, the effects and results of a king-level expert's 100 years of cultivation and a supreme-level expert's 100 years of cultivation were undoubtedly worlds apart. For example, during this period of time, the former could at most absorb a small stone, while the latter could absorb an entire mountain. The gap was just that exaggerated. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the difference between heaven and earth. 100 years of cultivation in the supremacy realm? Chu Yang frowned. If that's the case, can he reach the pinnacle of middle-grade supreme being? The Sword Spirit smiled bitterly. "Lord Sword Master, you're a high-level cultivator now, so why are you still saying such layman's words? These are two completely different concepts." The description of middle-grade Jizuan realm pinnacle was based on one's cultivation realm, while the increase in one's cultivation realm was based on one's years of cultivation and standard. Of course, there were also similarities between the two. It's definitely possible to advance to the next realm. If it can't, It'll only increase my cultivation by 100 years. Moreover, there have been so many low-grade supreme martial artists in history. Which one of them didn't take a small step forward after thousands of years of cultivation? This place is not like Tianqiu, where the spiritual qi is 100 times more concentrated. You want to reach the peak in a mere 100 years. You are truly indulging in fantasy. I see. That makes sense. Chu Yang pondered and said, how many super heavy pills can we refine with the medicines we have now? I remember. Back then, when Big Sister Z left, we used up half of the medicines. Now that I think about it, we really didn't know how expensive the ingredients were back then. What a waste. The sword spirit did a rough calculation. Don't be too pessimistic. Actually, some of the medicines have grown a lot in the tribulation space during this period of time. Currently, if we use them all up, together with a small amount of great elixirs, we should be able to refine 17 super heavy pills. I can't give you any more. Enough. Chu Yang made a prompt decision. Start refining immediately. Finish it as soon as possible. The higher the better. MNGB, let's start. 17 super versions of heavy pills were enough for Chu Yang to greatly improve the strength of all his brothers at the same time. However, even if they improved, Chu Yang reckoned that it was still far from enough. It was just a mere 100 years of cultivation. If it was converted into actual combat power, how much could it improve? How could it be compared to the Dharma Supreme's tens of thousands of years of cultivation? There was no room for comparison at all. But then again, even if it was the super heavy pills plan that the sword spirit gave him, Chu Yang might not care too much. Because Chu Yang's goal this time wasn't here at all. His real goal was what that person said back then. In the tribulation space, there is a gift that I left for you. This was what the mighty person who created the tribulation sword said to ZJ when his divine consciousness left the tribulation space. If there were other options, Chu Yang really didn't want to use them. BGNGZJ had an inexplicable relationship with that mighty person and had even said that he wanted to challenge him. If he used his gift, it would be equivalent to owing him a favor. Even if that mighty person didn't care about this at all, and didn't care about the favor that Chu Yang owed him, a favor was still a favor. A debt was a debt. That mighty person didn't care about it didn't mean that Chu Yang didn't care about it. However, Chu Yang really had no other choice now. He could only pin his hopes on this. Owing a favor had to be repaid, but if he didn't think of a way to improve the strength of ZJ and his brothers now, the risk during the final battle would greatly increase. If he couldn't take care of everything now, how could he think about the future? If ZJ's guess was right, the things here were probably still unusable by ZJ now. But now, he had no choice but to use them. Even if he couldn't use them, he had to take a risk. The Dharma Supreme's strength had increased greatly now, and the Enforcer's strength would definitely have increased considerably after demonization. Under such circumstances, ZJ's side would definitely lose. This was the final battle that concerned the future of all living beings in the Zhongtian. Defeat was equivalent to death. Therefore, Chu Yang had to do his best before the battle to raise his chances of winning to the maximum. He had to do his best, win or lose, and have no regrets in life or death. If he only had those 17 heavy pills, even if it wasn't a drop in the bucket to Chu Yang now, it was still too little. The ZJ brothers, Mo Qingwu and Mo Lei would have to take 11 of them. Wu Jueqing and Chu Le would also have to take 2 of them. If Tan Tan didn't give them. Alright, just one sentence from Tian Tian was enough to make ZJ break down. Senior brother, am I handsome? Am I even more handsome today than yesterday? Tian Tian didn't need to say more than that. If he said that to ZJ's ears 180 times, Tan Tan would still be able to enjoy himself. On the other hand, ZJ would definitely be driven crazy. Also, should he give some to Feng and Yu? An. ZJ's family? Parents? Grandfather? He would have to use at least 3 more, right? He should at least leave one for Wu Qianxian, right? Tai Butian should also have one, right? And ZJ's son, that little rascal should at least have one, right? 17 pills might seem like a lot, but once they were distributed, it was really not enough. Who should he give them to? Chu Yang thought to himself. If 17 pills were to be reversed, it would be 70 pills, perhaps it would be barely enough to distribute. 17 pills was really not enough. Actually, even if there were 70 pills and it was enough to distribute, what was the actual effect? Collectively increasing one's cultivation by 100 years, 17 pills would be 1,700 years. 70 pills would only be 7,000 years. Compared to the Dharma Supreme, it was just a fraction of his cultivation. It was really not optimistic. If only there were 700 pills, then it would definitely be enough. Minister Chu was mumbling that it was not enough. At the side, the sword spirit, who was packing up the herbs and preparing to refine pills, rolled his eyes. His originally somewhat illusory figure almost disappeared in a trance. It was clear how shocked he was. I say, big brother, my dear big brother, your imagination is too wild. Even in the heavenly imperial court, this kind of divine medicine is hard to find. Even if only one pill appears, it can trigger a bloody battle between many forces in the heavenly imperial court. You have 17 pills all of a sudden and you think it's not enough. And you want 70 pills? 700 pills? What are you thinking? You can't be so greedy, right? Enough is enough. Chu Yang smiled embarrassedly. Look at you, I'm just thinking. The more good things, the better. The deep-rooted bad habits of humans are always like this. You have to think twice. Even the heavenly elixir of the heavenly imperial court is not as effective as the heavy elixir in terms of recovery ability. The sword spirit complained, you have such unparalleled resources in the world, and you're still complaining. Isn't this too much? What about elixirs that can improve cultivation? Chu Yang asked. The most important thing in elixirs is to be safe. If the elixir is not safe, no matter how great its medicinal efficacy is, you won't be able to absorb it. The result will be in vain. However, the heavy elixir does not have this drawback. In terms of safety, there is no elixir that can surpass the heavy elixir in the world. It's just that when it comes to improving cultivation, it depends on the basic quality of the elixir. This is really hard to say. The sword spirit said, when you reach the heavenly imperial court and open the inheritance of the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud, there will be many ways to improve cultivation. The heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud was recognized as the #1 alchemist in the heavenly imperial court. His elixir recipes are also the most miraculous in the heavenly imperial court. In fact, this is also one of the biggest reasons why the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud, Zi Hao, rose so quickly in the heavenly imperial court. Of course, this is also the source of the jealousy and hatred of the other forces in the heavenly imperial court. This is also one of the main reasons why the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud fought alone. The heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud rose so quickly in the heavenly imperial court as a wanderer in the pugilistic world. His speed is amazing. After tens of thousands of years, he became the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud. Who doesn't fear him? Based on the situation at that time, if the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud could continue to develop, I believe that it would not take long for the entire heavenly imperial court to be under his control. Not helping him back then is probably a kind of tacit agreement between the various forces. If the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud defeated the extraterrestrial demon, he would become the savior and eternal master of the heavenly imperial court. So, the sword spirit's voice was a little strange, as if he was pointing at Shma. Chapter 1669. Yes. Even now, you have to keep it a secret. Even your brothers, don't let them know about it. After all, it's not a good thing to know too much about some things. Instead, it may harm them, the sword spirit warned solemnly. I understand. Isn't there a saying that ignorance is bliss? The complexity of the celestial imperial court, the greedy changes in people's hearts, and the various devious means are something that you people who have never been there can never imagine. The brighter the light behind it, the more boundless the haze. Sometimes, a single medicinal herb can cause countless deaths and injuries. A single spirit pill can cause too many battles. Even a careless glance can bring about a fatal disaster. A careless sentence can make you become the target of public criticism. Is this celestial imperial court actually so complicated? Chu Yang asked curiously. Isn't there an unusually strict discipline or law there? Don't the celestial emperors restrict their subordinates? Of course there are restrictions. But, you can only know the details when you get there. Now, no matter what I say, I can't explain it clearly. The sword spirit sighed. Any high-level plane is an even more complicated place. This principle is the same no matter where it is. To give a simple example, take the lower three heavens for example. The upper echelons compete for power and wealth. In the lower three heavens, they compete for territory. In the upper three heavens, they compete for resources. In the lower three heavens, as long as you have money and power, you can do things. In the upper three heavens, if you have power and influence, you are the boss. In the upper three heavens, it becomes power, influence, wealth and resources. You also have to have connections. Otherwise, you can't even keep it. In the celestial imperial court, if your own power can't reach a certain level, you can only choose to develop in a low-key way. Power, influence, wealth, resources, everything. Then there's the matter inside. It's very troublesome. The sword spirit finished the last sentence with a sigh. The materials needed for refining elixirs had already been collected. After informing Chu Yang, he went to refine the heavy elixirs. Chu Yang sat in the tribulation space. His eyes flickered as he murmured, power, influence, wealth, resources, in the afternoon. Chu Yang looked at Mo Tianji who had gathered in his room. Jiyu Duxing, Ao Xieyun, Xie Danqiong, Ji Mo, Luo Kedi, Dong Wushang, and Mo Lei Rui Biyu Tong, Mo Qing Wu, and the others made a total of 10 people. Boss, why did you call us here? Ji Mo smiled. Is there something good to eat? Is there anything fun to do? Luo Kedi asked. Is there anything you want to discuss? This was Mo Tianji. Are you going to kill someone? This was Jiyu Duxing. Don't tell me you want me to play dead again. That's too difficult for me. Rui Butong said. Chu Yang had a headache. He decided to cut the Gordian knot. Stop right there. This time, I called you because there's something important. As he spoke, he took out 10 new heavy pills and placed them on his palm. It rotated with a rumbling sound. A strange fragrance assailed his nostrils. He felt relaxed and happy. Luo Kedi's, Ji Mo's, and Rui Butong's nostrils twitched rapidly. The sniffing sounds almost turned the narrow space into a vacuum. It smelled really good. Actually, it wasn't that others didn't want to do so. It was just that it was really too degrading. They couldn't bring themselves to do so. Being shameless was invincible. It was the same for taking advantage of others. As for Ji Mo and the other two, they had long forgotten what shame was. Why would they care about this? What is this? Jiyu Duxing asked. Isn't it a heavy pill? Why does it feel a little different from before? This is a heavy pill, but it's a super heavy pill. Taking one can increase the cultivation of a supreme martial artist by 100 years. Chu Yang deliberately emphasized. Hiss tilde tilde tilde, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. 100 years. Supreme martial artist cultivation? Increasing cultivation by 100 years and increasing the cultivation of a supreme martial artist by 100 years were two completely different things. A supreme martial artist wouldn't even bother to take a look at an ordinary martial artist's 100 years of cultivation. But this one pill could increase the cultivation of a supreme martial artist by 100 years out of thin air. What kind of concept was this? It was a little too shocking. Everyone takes one pill now. Take it immediately. Quickly absorb the medicinal effects as much as possible and do your best to improve your own cultivation and comprehension. In the face of a great enemy, every bit of improvement counts. Every bit of improvement means a greater chance of victory. At least, you'll have a greater chance of survival, Chu Yang urged. The heavy pills in Chu Yang's hand slowly floated up and landed in everyone's palms. Mo Qingwu took the heavy pills and asked suspiciously, "Why are there only 10? What about yours? I've already taken mine." "Silly girl, can't you see that my aura is different now?" Chu Yang smiled warmly. Only Mo Qingwu was still thinking about Chu Yang wholeheartedly at this moment. If Chu Yang didn't have any, Mo Qingwu would definitely give her own to Chu Yang. It didn't matter if she took it or not, as long as Chu Yang improved. Mo Qingwu's words made the other brothers blush. Because everyone was excited just now and didn't think of this. Everyone, don't be shy. Men are always a little careless. Mo Tianji smoothed things over. Not to mention, my sister is Chu Yang's wife. How can you compare? Just like Mo Lei's sister-in-law, she also ate it after seeing Dong Wushang eat it first. You're not women, how can you understand the deep feelings in this? Everyone burst into laughter. Mo Qingwu and Mo Lei both blushed. But while Mo Qingwu was shy, she was also a little happy. Originally, second brother was upset because of her and wanted to quarrel with Chu Yang when he saw him. But now, he had accepted it. Just now, he even said that she was Chu Yang's wife. This meant, what wife? That's so unpleasant to hear. Why don't you say that I'm your partner? How nice would that sound? The little girl pouted in her heart and rolled her eyes. But she didn't know that Mo Tianji was already making plans for his sister. What kind of woman could be called a wife by a man's side? That was the position of the legal wife. Only the legal wife could be called a wife. As for the others, they didn't count. At least, they couldn't use the exclusive title of wife. Partner, confidant, and other titles couldn't be compared to the seemingly vulgar title of wife. Mo Tianji seemed to be joking and helping his brothers out of their predicament. But in fact, he had already confirmed Mo Qingwu's position as the big wife. Of course, Mo Tianji wouldn't be at ease. In the future, he would still think of ways to help his sister. Yes, his sister was too honest. In the hands of Chu Yang, this playboy, if he didn't make plans for her, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. A brother-in-law is really tiring. A brother-in-law who loves his sister is even more tiring. Especially when he loves his sister and has to be the brother-in-law of someone like Chu Yang. That's tiring on top of tiring. If that's the case, should we call her sister-in-law in advance? Wahahaha. Jimo winked. Luo Kedi followed suit. Mo Qingwu rolled her eyes and said in a dignified manner, "Second brother Ji, don't tell me I don't dare to agree to you calling me sister-in-law. Go ahead and call me that. Why don't you call me that? See if I agree or not." Wow. This little girl is really thick-skinned. Mo was stunned for a long time before he said it. He almost choked. He really didn't call her sister-in-law. The others also looked at each other. They didn't expect this shy little girl, everyone's little sister, to be so brave today. Ha ha ha. Everyone laughed. Chu Yang also laughed. Does Senior Wu and Le have a share? Mo Tianji laughed heartily. It seemed as if he had casually asked this question. Most men were careless, but Mo Tianji was definitely not one of them. This sentence was the best proof. Yes, why would I give them a share? I'll send it to them right away. However, Chu Yang didn't suspect anything and answered casually. After he finished speaking, he seemed to have thought of something. His eyes intentionally or unintentionally looked at Mo Tianji with a gaze that was guarding against perverts, just like the way Mo Tianji looked at Chu Yang back then. However, Mo Tianji had already turned his head back. It seemed as if he had just casually asked that question. He chatted with his brothers for a while with a normal expression and swallowed the heavy pill in his hand. He was the last one to take the pill, even later than Mo Qingwu. He watched as everyone swallowed the heavy pill and sat cross-legged on the ground to practice, digesting the newly obtained huge medicinal effects without any distractions. Chu Yang completely covered his room with a supreme martial artist's divine sense cage. Then, he walked out quietly. He walked to Chu Le's door. Before he knocked, Chu Le had already opened the door. Big brother? After dealing with the corpses these few days, Chu Le already looked a lot calmer, as if she had gone through a lot. Facing the cycle of life and death one after another made this little girl mature exceptionally quickly. This level of maturity made Chu Yang's heart ache sometimes. "Is Elder Wu here? Please come over for a while. I have something to tell you," Chu Yang said telepathically. Wu Jueqing walked over very quickly. What's the important matter? I'm just about to go out. You're going out? Chu Yang was stunned for a moment. What was he going out for when he wasn't regulating his breathing and waiting for the big battle to come? I'm going to look for the Dharma Supreme and give it one last try. Wu Jueqing's face was solemn as he said, we definitely won't be able to find him if we look for him openly. But if I go alone, he might show up. If he can stop at this point, there's still a way to salvage the situation. At least we won't continue to suffer. Chapter 1670. Chu Yang said earnestly, besides, the great clans have already been massacred. The Dharma Supreme can't stop even if he wants to. It's too late to rein in the horse near the cliff, too late to mend the leak. Wu Jueqing sighed. How can I not know the risks of this trip? But if this goes on, it will really be too out of control. The entire continent is on the brink of destruction. What does my personal safety matter? This life of mine was saved in the first place. It's my duty to protect the world, even if there's only a glimmer of hope, it's still worth fighting for. Chu Yang said, I understand what Elder means. But if Elder Wu still insists on going, it's better for you to take this elixir before going. Elixir? What elixir? What elixir is there to take at this point? Asked Wu Jueqing. Heavy elixir. Chu Yang said seriously, I know that heavy elixirs are not unfamiliar to Elder. But what I'm giving you this time is different from what Elder Wu has taken before. The previous heavy elixirs were more focused on recovery. Now, this heavy elixir can increase Elder Wu's current cultivation level by 100 years. There's actually such a miraculous elixir? Wu Jueqing's eyes lit up. Since that's the case, why would an old man like me need to take such a miraculous elixir? Why don't I give it all to Le? She's still weak and can use it to improve herself. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Le taking one is already her limit. I'm afraid she still needs Elder Wu to help her tidy up her meridians. Although Le's talent is outstanding, she's after all only at the peak of supreme martial artist level. Not even 7th grade yet. The effect of this elixir is still a little too strong for her. She needs Elder's help. Besides, there's no benefit in taking more of this elixir. If Le needs it in the future, I'll just refine more for her. I'm still not stingy towards my own sister. Chu Yang pondered for a moment and said, there's one more thing. If I'm not wrong, after this battle, we'll probably have to leave the heavens. When that time comes, Elder Wu will have to go to the heavens to increase his strength. Prepare to meet your brothers. With Elder's current cultivation level, I'm afraid. Before Chu Yang finished, Wu Jueqing was already completely convinced. No need to say any more. I'll take it. The battle is imminent. Every bit of improvement I can. After dealing with Wu Jueqing, Chu Yang didn't stay for long. He went on to look for the Moonbreeze couple. Of course, in order to avoid the possibility that the Moonbreeze couple was still busy sparring or, cough, that, Chu Yang had already started coughing from afar. Cough, 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 cough. He coughed with every step. When he reached the door, Yu Lingxue had already opened the door with his handsome face flushed red. He hurriedly complained, if you're already here, then so be it. Why are you coughing so hard? Are you sick? Even his coughing sounds weird, and it's filled with a lewd smell. Feng Yuro's face was also flushed red. Obviously, the couple knew what Chu Yang was worried about. In the face of such an awkward situation, Chu Yang could only rub his nose and smile bitterly. Fine, I had good intentions, but now, you're saying that I'm sick. His mouth was filled with a lewd taste, and even his coughs were lewd. I really don't know where you heard the lewd sound from. Your ears are really different. Chu Yang wanted to retort, but Feng Yuro was right beside him. How could he be so presumptuous? He could only take his pride into consideration and swallow this loss. After exchanging some pleasantries, he went straight to the point and stated the purpose of his visit. However, to Chu Yang's surprise, the Moonbreeze couple frankly refused to take it. Staring at the 2 heavy pills in Chu Yang's hands, which were enough to make all the martial artists in the world go crazy, Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro had complicated expressions. The two of us can't take this anymore. Why? Chu Yang was very surprised. So many people dream of having good things but can't get. I've already given them to you, and you're actually rejecting me? What's going on? Sword Master Chu, there's something you don't know. In fact, our cultivation has already reached the limit of the heavenly realm. If we really want to, we're very confident of breaking through. If we really take this heavy pill now and suddenly gain new strength, it's very likely that we'll automatically break through the bottleneck and reach Ning Tianya's level. By then, even if we don't want to break through the void and leave this realm, it'll be impossible. Yu Lingxue smiled gently and said, but we don't want to leave this heavenly realm. This is also the biggest reason why we've never taken that last step. At this point, the couple looked at each other. In their eyes, there was an indescribable longing and unwillingness to part with each other. The two of them secretly held each other's hands. Obviously, this was a decision made by both of them. In terms of personal desires, we've received Sword Master Chu's help and generously gave us the spring of life. Our long-cherished wish has come true. Now, we're preparing to have a child and pass on the legacy of the Moonbreeze couple. If possible, maybe. Yu Lingxue's face was a little red, but he still said it openly. Feng Yuro, who was at the side, was also blushing. She listened to Yu Lingxue's words with unusual gentleness. We want to raise the child and watch him grow up bit by bit. As parents, it's a little irresponsible of us to enter the chaotic martial world like the Heavenly Palace at this time, where we can't even protect ourselves. Yu Lingxue smiled and said, for the sake of our child, we must also give him a stable environment to grow up in. Let him grow up smoothly, start a family, and have children. Therefore, we've decided not to go to the Heavenly Palace. At least, we won't consider taking that last step in the short term. As for the second reason, the great battle is imminent. Success depends on man, but victory or defeat depends on the heavens. After this battle, if we lose, then everyone will die together. It doesn't matter whether we go to the Heavenly Palace or not. But if we win, then, after the whole world has gone through this catastrophe, even if the main culprit is gone, it'll be a scene of devastation. Yu Lingxue said affectionately, for this continent, we've once guarded it for more than 10,000 years. We really can't let go of such a devastated continent. After this battle, you have more important things to do. Obviously, it's impossible for you to stay and clean up this mess. Since that's the case, we, husband and wife, are duty-bound to take on this responsibility. And we've always thought that this should be our responsibility. Yu Lingxue said resolutely. We want this continent to return to its former bright blue sky. Let this continent return to peace and tranquility, even more peaceful and joyful than before. Chu Yang left the Moonbreeze couple's room with heartfelt reverence. He only left behind a promise, a very solemn promise. That was Yu Lingxue's request. It's impossible for our generation to go up there. But, if our child is successful in the future and has the opportunity to break through the limit and go to the Heavenly Palace, I hope that Sword Master Chu will take care of him on account of our friendship. To this, Chu Yang's reply was, if such a day really comes, I'll definitely do it. I'll definitely not let my old friend suffer any grievances. Chu Yang considered for a long time and finally decided to give Ling Muyang a super heavy pill. Chu Yang still found Ling Muyang very pleasing to the eye. Just the fact that he had a clear conscience in his 10,000 years in the martial world was worth a heavy pill. And it could be said that there were no so-called big clans now, so there was no such thing as an enemy of swordmasters. Everyone was fighting for a common enemy. Chu Yang couldn't be stingy with this empty promise. Ling Muyang was so excited about the pill that tears almost flowed out of his eyes. With this medicinal pill, Ling Muyang would definitely be able to break through the bottleneck and take the final step to surpass the boundaries of the heavens. He would be able to enter the heavenly imperial court that martial artists yearned for even in their dreams, and he would even be able to search for traces of his father along the way. And this point was also the thing that Ling Muyang was most concerned about in his entire life. When he came out of Ling Muyang's room, he was stopped by Tan Tan. The two of them almost came to blows on the spot and broke off all relations. Tan Tan shamelessly demanded an exorbitant price. "I want 10 pills. We're brothers, you can at least give me this, right?" Chu Yang almost fainted from anger. "No. Get lost immediately. 10 pills, you think they're cabbages? The minimum is 8. You can't give me any less. I'll get angry if you give me any less. 1 pill at most. You can get angry. I'm telling you, I have a bad temper. I'll fall out with you if you give me less than 7 pills. 1 pill at most. Fall out with me. I don't have much patience. You can kill me if I give you less than 1 pill. 1 pill. I'll pull out my sword if you want to die. Fuck. 3 pills should be enough, right? We grew up together naked. When we were young, we stood by the river and competed to see who could pee further. Such a deep friendship. Blood brothers. Only 1 pill. Get lost. Don't try to get close to me. You're ruthless. You're ruthless. Itchy, you're actually calling me old. You're awesome. I'm telling you, you bastard, 2 pills. 2 pills should be enough, right? I've already retreated a dozen steps. You should give me face. I'll ask you 10,000 times a day if you don't give me 2 pills. I won't be a human if I don't ask you once. You're not a human. Cut the crap. Is that okay? Give me a straight answer. Oh. Are you threatening me? My most handsome and elegant senior brother, I admire you the most in this generation of mine. How would I dare to threaten you? Boo-hoo, I'm really going to cry. How about I massage your back and shoulders for you? Just 2 pills. Deal. Fuck, you've wasted so much of my saliva. Just 2 pills. Just you wait, when you get married, I'll tear off your roof on the night of your wedding night. Fuck, I swear I won't be a human if I don't take revenge for this. Tan Tan took the heavy pills and immediately turned hostile. He took the 2 heavy pills and left while cursing. His face was full of dissatisfaction. Chu Yang frowned as he calculated. He hadn't divided the 17 heavy pills yet. Now, there was only 1 left. Chapter 1671. Chu Yang had a headache. Not only did he lose the share that he intended to leave for Tai Butian, Wu Qianqian and his parents, but he also had to guard against Tan Tan's sneak attacks. Based on Chu Yang's understanding of Tan Tan, this 3-star Saint King was definitely capable of such despicable means. Sigh, I can only think of a way in the future. With a heart full of helplessness, he met a few people. Huang Xiaoliu, a few experts from the Huang clan, a few experts from the Ling clan, and Ling Hanxue. Regardless of gender, they were all looking at him with an extremely resentful gaze. Ling Hanxue was still all right. After all, she was a woman. But as for the rest, they were all men. Making such resentful expressions was really too frustrating. But now, he really didn't have any. Forget about the others, but Huang Xiaoliu, you're also resentful. Giving you some dregs can make you explode. What's there to be resentful about? Chu Yang shuddered and walked away. Once again, he returned to his room. At this time, among the few brothers inside, Jiyu Duxing, whose real strength was vaguely the strongest, had already finished absorbing the medicinal effect and was guarding the brothers. How's the improvement? Chu Yang quietly walked in, and asked Jiyu Duxing via telepathy, for fear of disturbing everyone's cultivation. Very good. It's greatly exceeded my original expectations. Jiyu Duxing excitedly said via telepathy, I was originally a junior supreme martial artist. But after taking this medicine, I've now reached the peak of the junior supreme martial artist level. I even have a feeling that I can enter the higher supreme martial artist level at any time. The bottleneck of the higher supreme martial artist level no longer exists. That's good. Chu Yang heaved a sigh of relief. The effects mentioned by the sword spirit were only theoretical. The actual effect was still unknown. Although he had taken it before, his improvement was not obvious. Although the effects of his own improvement were obvious, it wasn't that great. But now, the shocking effects of the super heavy pill had been greatly reflected in Jiyu Duxing's body. His chances of winning the decisive battle in the future had naturally increased by a few notches. Then, he said, I'll take this opportunity to go into seclusion for a while. After everyone has finished absorbing the medicinal effect, please guard me. Before I wake up on my own, no one is to disturb me no matter what. Gu Duxing nodded in agreement. Chu Yang took a deep breath and entered the inner room of the room. Then, he entered the tribulation space. Since the elixir was effective, then, I'll try to open the seal and see if I can get something out of it. It would be best if it was something that could help him and his brothers in their cultivation. Otherwise, this battle would not be optimistic. Are you sure you want what's inside? The sword spirit sucked in a breath of cold air. I'm afraid that the thing inside is no small matter. If you want to forcefully open it, I'm afraid that even an emperor wouldn't be able to do so. Chu Yang's face darkened. We're in a critical period right now. He had to try his best to open it. Even if I can only open it once with all my might, it's enough. The current situation is very unfavorable. If we can't improve further, it will be very difficult for us to win this battle. I'm afraid that we will be in danger of being completely wiped out. If that's the case, then the Chongqian continent is finished. The Dharma Supreme will definitely not stop his plan to destroy the world. If the heavens cannot bear such consequences, neither can we. But, there's no but now. Chu Yang said resolutely, no matter what. He had to open that seal no matter the cost. After opening it, whether or not the thing inside can be used is one thing. But we can't give up on this hope before we try. Seize this last chance and try your best. Bring me there, Chu Yang ordered. The sword spirit was extremely helpless. With a frown, he brought Chu Yang to a corner of the tribulation space. This place looked no different from any other place. Hazy mist shrouded the edges. Obviously, this was where the barrier of the tribulation space was. Is this the place? Chu Yang reached out and touched it. However, his finger directly touched a piece of mysterious flexibility. It was the spatial wall. This is the place. The sword spirit nodded affirmatively. Chu Yang was a little dizzy. It seems that I can't even find where the seal is. How can I talk about breaking it? Breaking this seal doesn't require force. Instead, it requires mental strength. As long as you focus your mental strength, you can see the seal. The sword spirit said, but I'll say this first. This seal is very powerful. Moreover, because breaking the seal requires mental strength to attack the seal, if you fail, you will have to bear the consequences of mental strength backlash. In other words, if you fail, you will have to bear the full force of mental strength backlash. It's like you punching yourself, and it's a full force punch. Chu Yang grinned. He felt cold sweat dripping down his spine. This thing was easy to say. However, punching yourself with all your strength was definitely not a good feeling. Not only was it not a good feeling, but it was also very uncomfortable. And it was a mental strength backlash. He really didn't want to relive the previous painful experience. It would definitely be like a trip to the 18 levels of hell. Unfortunately, Chu Yang didn't have much choice now. Even if it was a painful experience, he had to try it. So be it, because if it didn't work, he would have to start a real tour of hell. Standing in front of the seal, Chu Yang took a deep breath and adjusted his spiritual power to its optimal state. Then, he began to circulate it with all his might. After a while, he suddenly focused his mental strength in his eyes and looked forward. Right in front of his eyes, an almost transparent barrier slowly appeared out of thin air. Behind this barrier, he could faintly see a lot of fruits piled up inside. They were arranged in a disorderly manner. The person who placed these things clearly didn't treat these fruits as anything good. He just casually threw them in. He didn't consider that the irregular arrangement would affect the fruits themselves. Seeing this situation, Chu Yang felt a burst of heartache. At the same time, he was overjoyed. First, since the other party didn't value these fruits very much, the seal might not be very formal. This was undoubtedly a good sign for him. Maybe he could open it right away. Second, since these were fruits, then these fruits themselves must be heavenly treasures. Since they were heavenly treasures, then they must have the effect of increasing cultivation. He believed that this wouldn't be a waste of effort. Things that the other party didn't value were very rare now. Looking as far as the eye could see, each of those fruits was surrounded by a hazy halo. Just based on this point alone, all the heavenly treasures in the Chongqian continent did not have such a peculiar phenomenon. This was enough to explain the degree of extraordinariness of these fruits. The problem now was how to take them out. He hoped that the other party really didn't value them. That way, they wouldn't set up a strong seal. At this point, he could only work hard to move forward. Chu Yang made up his mind. He separated a tentacle of his mental strength and extended it toward the seal. Just as he got close to this almost transparent seal, he felt a sense of powerlessness that couldn't be shaken at all. But fortunately, he didn't suffer any backlash. Chu Yang gradually increased the intensity of his mental strength, but the feeling was the same from beginning to end. There was no effect at all. The intensity of his mental strength gradually climbed to the limit of Chu Yang's body, but he still couldn't break the seal. Chu Yang tried every way, but there was no progress. In desperation, he gathered all his mental strength at one point and rushed forward. He wanted to use the heaven and earth strike, hoping for a fluke, puff, bang. Minister Chu was immediately hit by an extremely strong rebounding force. Then, he flew out like he was riding on a cloud. Chu Yang was hit by the recoil of the seal. He lay on the ground and didn't get up for a long time. For a moment, he was in so much pain that he couldn't even make a sound. He could only roll back and forth on the ground. It was the kind of rolling that used up all his strength and his whole body was completely tense. After a long time, he finally managed to catch his breath. He held his head and moaned, "Oda. Oda. Fuck him." The recoil this time was really not light. The recoil of Chu Yang's mental strength, if converted to martial strength, was almost equivalent to the full force punch of the number one expert of the heavenly layer, Ning Qianya. After all, Chu Yang's mental strength was almost the number one in the heavenly layer. Even the current Dharma Supreme couldn't be compared to him. So how could this recoil be easy to bear? When Chu Yang struggled to stand up, he still felt extremely weak all over. He was actually sweating from the pain and was close to dehydration. The recoil of mental strength didn't only affect the brain and divine sense. It also had a considerable impact on the physical body. After gulping down a few mouthfuls of the spring of life, he felt slightly better. Looking at the seal that still seemed to have nothing, Chu Yang felt a lingering fear. In the past, he didn't know what it meant to be a mantis trying to stop a chariot or a mayfly trying to shake a mountain. Today, he completely understood. There was no wavering at all. What should he do? There was obviously a treasure mountain in front of him, but he didn't have the means to open it. "Why don't you give up?" The sword spirit advised. "This isn't a seal that you can open now. If you force yourself to try, it will only cause damage to yourself. The battle is imminent. If you are not in your best condition, it will be more disadvantageous for the future battle. And the greater the impact, the stronger the recoil. If something goes wrong, I'm afraid." Chu Yang shook his head. "I understand. If something goes wrong, it may cause me to have a mental breakdown or even become a zombie. But if I give up now, it's equivalent to giving up this battle and the lives of my brothers. How can I give up? Using my life to exchange for the lives of my brothers, this gamble is worth it. I'll give it my all." Chu Yang took a deep breath and stood in front of the seal once again. His mental strength was activated again and attacked the seal. Then, there was another scream. Chu Yang was thrown out again. This time, it was even worse. Chapter 1672. Chu Yang only felt that his brain had turned into pieces of tofu dregs. Stars were flying in front of his eyes, as if countless universes had appeared. After a long time, he stood up and tried again. Chu Yang's previous guess was right. Every time he suffered a backlash, it was comparable to the 18 levels of hell. Such a painful feeling. If it were someone else, they would rather die than experience it a second time. But Chu Yang would definitely not give up. Even if it was 10 times, 100 times, because he knew that this was where the hope of this battle lay. It was also where the greatest hope for the survival of his brothers lay. If he couldn't open this place, There was absolutely no chance of winning this battle. Just when Chu Yang used his spiritual energy to attack the seal for the first time. In a place that was unknown how far away, a white-clothed youth was standing on top of a majestic mountain with 8 extremely beautiful women. In front of them was an ancient but extremely majestic strange city wall, winding between the mountains. Looking around, the landscape was picturesque. This is my hometown. Every time I see the Dragon City, my heart is always surging. I can't control myself. The young man in white looked at the vast land under his feet with clear and affectionate eyes. A graceful woman in white came in front of him. On her dazzlingly beautiful face, there was a trace of a smile. This place is indeed very good. And, whether it's the local customs or the beautiful scenery, it's much better than most of the places we've seen, another beautiful woman said excitedly. Why don't we stay here for a while? Let's take a break for a while. Let's change our mood. It can also satisfy our husband's homesickness. Good idea. The women clapped together, expressing their agreement. The young man in white tilted his head and thought for a while. He said, "This is also good. But I'll first go and see what people wear now. It's better to play around here. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. We can't be too shocking, right? Okay." However, the nearest city below seems to be very lively. I can hear the sound of firecrackers. The woman in white who had spoken earlier tilted her head to listen and said, "It seems to be a big day. Many people are setting off firecrackers. It's actually some university. What kind of people are admitted to some university? It seems to be very fun. And this university, what is it? Do you remember the academies in our hometown?" The white-clothed youth said excitedly, "The universities here are probably the local names of those academies. However, there are no martial skills taught here. But you can learn a lot of other things, even though you might not be able to use them. Is that so? Does it sound interesting?" The girls were all excited. "Why don't we go to school and role-play?" The young man in white smiled evilly. "Good idea, good idea." The girls cheered and expressed their approval. "Go. Let's go down and get a feel of the situation first, then we'll go to school." The white-clothed youth laughed and stood up. "Let's do it." Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly felt a spiritual fluctuation, and he couldn't help but frown. He immediately understood what had happened. He frowned and muttered, "What is that little guy doing? You're not afraid to die again and again. Do you want to play yourself to death?" "That little guy?" the girls asked with interest. "The one in the double sky continent. It's really annoying. I'm in high spirits and want to do something. I haven't been in such a good mood for many years." The white-clothed youth twitched his mouth. "This little guy is the kind of person who won't turn back even if he hits the south wall. He must break the south wall. Well, since he's playing with his life so hard, I won't waste any more time on him. Let him go in once." As he spoke, he snapped his fingers and muttered, "You can only eat the yellow one. You can only take one. If you're too greedy and die, don't blame me." Then he stood up and laughed. "Wives, let's go to school. At the same time, I'll let you see my favorite colorful world." With a burst of cheers, the girls followed him all the way. It was as if beautiful clouds were floating in the sky. In the tribulation space, Chu Yang was still persistently attacking the seal. It seemed as if he wouldn't stop until he broke through the seal. Suddenly, the power of the seal disappeared. Chu Yang was caught off guard. He stumbled and rushed in like a bull. He almost rushed to the top of those fruits. For a moment, his eyes were wide open. Outside, the sword spirit also opened his eyes wide. "What's going on? How is it possible? He really broke it. Wow. Sword Master can't be so fierce, right? He can even break the seal set by that powerful person. This is really amazing." At the same time, a voice sounded in Chu Yang's mind. "Little guy, do you want to die? Even if you want to die, you don't have to do it in such a painful way, right?" Before Chu Yang could speak, the voice said, "Well, I have something important to do now, so I won't waste time with you. This time, I'll make an exception and let you in. But remember, if you want to go in the future, You have to wait until you're strong enough. If you're not strong enough, you can't go in even if you kill yourself. This is the only time I'll give you preferential treatment. There won't be a next time. You're only allowed to take the yellow ones. You're only allowed to take one. You're not allowed to take more. If you're too greedy, don't blame me. Then the voice disappeared again. Chuyang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It turned out that it wasn't his sincerity that could move metal and stone. It was the other party who made an exception for him. That's right. Based on my previous experience, my successful breakthrough this time was a little too unusual. I had to face reality and admit the gap between us. However, it's rare for me to come in. Why am I only allowed to take one? Isn't this too much of a pity? Looking around, he saw that there were two kinds of fruits. One was yellow and was piled up outside. There were a lot of them. It was the kind that allowed one to take one. The other was black, but there were only two of them. They were arranged in a row inside. As for the innermost part, there was a sword floating in the air. Chuyang stretched out his hand and grabbed a yellow fruit. He wanted to try to grab a second one and see what these things were. But an extremely pure and terrifyingly huge energy suddenly emerged from the fruit in his hand. Chuyang was sent flying by this energy and tumbled a dozen times in a row. He squatted down on the ground, and with a bang, a purple crystal was smashed into pieces by him. Minister Chu's expression was strange. He wanted to cry but had no tears. My butt. But his butt had really cracked and was dripping with blood. As for the seal in front of him, it had disappeared again. Chuyang knew that this time, it wouldn't be opened a second time. At least, before he was strong enough, he wouldn't be able to open it. Even if he really killed himself, it would be useless. But looking at his hand, he was a little depressed. Is this fruit enough? But how can that fruit be so powerful? What kind of fruit is this? While Chuyang was in doubt, the sword spirit had already rushed over. His eyes were wide open. You took it out. You actually managed to break the seal. You actually. That person took the initiative to let me in. Chuyang rolled his eyes. What do you mean I broke the seal? I'm still far from it. It was rare for him to say something like this. He wasn't bragging. The sword spirit was at a loss. This time, I said that I was risking my life. I wasn't risking my life to break the seal. I was risking my life to try and break the seal. I was betting that he would eventually let me in. Do you understand? Chuyang rolled his eyes and said, he's so busy and lazy. He certainly won't be able to endure my repeated attacks. This place will open as long as he's annoyed. Otherwise, why would I risk my life? Don't I know that I don't have the ability to open the seal? Then, he sighed and said, but after this time, it will be impossible for me to use such a trick to go in again. Let's not talk about whether he'll agree or not. I'll look down on myself if I use such a trick again. The sword spirit was stunned. So, this guy acted as if he was risking his life to use a trick. Suddenly, the sword spirit had a new understanding of the sword master's craftiness. Let's talk about something serious. What did you take out? The sword spirit tactfully changed the topic. Wait a minute. Chuyang said angrily, let me take a breather first. Do you think that I was faking it when I tried to break the seal so many times? Although what I did was just a cheap trick, I was truly risking my life. Ouch. It really hurts. Why can't the heavy pill heal the wound on my butt? The sword spirit curled his lips. That almighty person looks like a bad-tempered person. He's only making your butt bleed. He's already very merciful that he didn't permanently cripple your butt. Moreover, he wants to punish you. What kind of punishment would it be if the heavy pill was effective? After a long time, Chuyang struggled to stand up. He twisted his body and looked at his bloody back. He wanted to cry but had no tears. How can I wear clothes like this? But, how can I not wear clothes? Sigh, I don't want to talk about it. It's all tears. He finally had the time to look at the fruit in his hand. He saw a strange-shaped fruit in his hand. The reason why it was said to be strangely shaped was because if this fruit was placed from a distance, No matter which side it was viewed from, it would still be round. Even when he held it in front of his eyes would tell him, "This fruit is round. Isn't it normal for a fruit to be round?" But the feeling of holding it in his hand told him that this fruit wasn't round. Instead, it was completely square in shape. It looked like a square cube. The edges of its overall appearance were as neat as a knife. Chu Yang couldn't help but gasp in amazement. Chapter 1673. I really didn't expect that there are so many strange things in the boundless universe. The fruit that comes from a tree can actually be so square. If you say it's square, then so be it. What was even more amazing was that it could even give people a perfect visual deception. He was really a little speechless. On the surface of the fruit, there was an unusually hazy fog. It was very clear, like a white halo that surrounded the fruit. Holding it in his hand, his fingers couldn't actually touch the surface of the fruit at all. It could only be said that he was holding a ball of fog, and the fog was holding the fruit inside. Such a magical fruit, not to mention Chu Yang, even the sword spirit had never seen such a miracle in his life. It's really magical. There's actually such a spiritual object in the world. The sword spirit was almost stunned. Suddenly, he exclaimed, "There are actually naturally formed words on this fruit." Words! Chu Yang was stunned and looked at it intently. He couldn't help but open his mouth wide. There were actually words. Not only were there words, but the words could actually move. 5 words, a symbol, on the surface of the fruit, moving slowly and continuously, as if following some specific pattern: heaven, earth, black, yellow, fruit. Chu Yang read out these words one by one. He couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. There are really 5 words. I'm afraid these are the names of this strange fruit. Heaven, earth, mystery, yellow fruit. What kind of fruit was this? Even the name grew on the fruit. And what kind of symbol was this? What did it mean? He didn't seem to have seen it before. It was like 2 fish sleeping with their necks stretched out, forming a strange circle, one black and one white. There was a white eye on the black fish's head, and a black eye on the white fish's head. What kind of symbol was this? As the strange fragrance continued to spread, the sword spirit suddenly cried out in alarm. This was because his body was actually within this strange fragrance. It was recovering continuously. The injuries from the battle with the Dharma Supreme were actually recovering without any medicine, and the reason for this amazing result was just the fragrance of this fruit. Just the fragrance alone could have such a great effect. What was going on? Chu Yang and the sword spirit were flabbergasted. Then, they turned their heads at the same time, and looked at the fruit in Chu Yang's hand. Just the fragrance alone is enough to completely heal my injuries. You, sword spirit said in a trembling voice, "You can't be thinking of eating me in one bite, right?" Chu Yang also took in a breath of cold air. He was sweating profusely. If he had swallowed the fruit in one gulp when he took it out, then, he was sure that he would have exploded all over the tribulation space. Even the entire tribulation space had exploded. It wasn't surprising for Duo Zik to explode. This fruit contains a huge amount of energy. Even if 10 of you ate it, you would still be able to eat it. Even if 10 people work together, I'm afraid they won't be able to bear it. The sword spirit simply sensed the enormous medicinal power of the Heaven-Earth Arcana yellow fruit, and his face turned pale with a swish. This kind of fruit contained a huge amount of pure medicinal power. To a martial artist whose cultivation wasn't high enough, it was simply an irresistible poison. The only result of consuming it was a body explosion. Chu Yang was completely at a loss. The seal was finally opened after all the tricks, and the fruit with a huge amount of energy was taken out. But, how was he going to eat it? This time, he didn't return empty-handed from a treasure mountain. He had a supreme elixir in his hand, but he didn't dare to eat it. He was even more at a loss. The energy contained in this fruit. The sword spirit smiled bitterly. He seemed a little hesitant and unsure. Sword Master, the power of this fruit. In my most conservative estimation, it can make the most ordinary person start from nothing. Without any foundation, he can directly rush to the peak of the Earth level. This is also the most conservative estimate. Chu Yang was stunned. This time, he was really stunned. Since Chu Yang was reborn, he had many adventures. The heavenly treasures that he had obtained could be found in the entire heavenly layer. It was definitely worthy of the word the most. There was no one else. It was the only one. However, this fruit had already beaten all of Chu Yang's fortuitous encounters to the bottom of the valley. In fact, it seemed that all of his fortuitous encounters and heavenly treasures added together weren't as miraculous as this one fruit. This was a bit too exaggerated. Sword Master's understanding of the so-called Earth level is probably still a little hazy. Let me give you a simple example. The so-called Earth level strength is a level higher than the current Dharma Supreme. The sword spirit grinned. At best, it's only a level lower than the peak level of the heavenly demon when he wasn't injured. I don't know when Sword Master will be able to understand it more clearly if I put it this way. Of course, the prerequisite for reaching the Earth level I'm talking about is, you have to be able to bear it. If one can't bear it, the result is very simple. With a bang, even the fruit and the person are gone. It was rare for the sword spirit to be so humorous. He said, of course, it can't be said that there's nothing there. If those scattered pieces of flesh and blood were buried in the soil, it would instantly make the trees within a radius of 100 miles grow to their limits. Then, they would wither and turn into rotten wood, turning into fine powder. After that, in the following thousands of years, the treasures of heaven and earth would continue to grow and even mutate. It's definitely not a leduo that the martial world yearns for. It's a rather simple matter, eh? Chu Yang looked at the sword spirit with a fake smile. He gritted his teeth and said, "You're so damn humorous today. You're either dropping the ball or joking with me. You're really good. You're really good. You're really amazing." The sword spirit chuckled mischievously. It seemed as if he was gloating over Chu Yang's misfortune. Gloating over other people's misfortune. This sentence seemed to be somewhat contradictory. But this was the sword spirit's state of mind at the moment. This was the first time he saw Chu Yang completely helpless in the face of good things. It was completely different from his previous confident and smug self. Naturally, he was gloating a little. Of course, he was also worried about how to deal with this fruit. How could he not gloat and be depressed at the same time? One could only look but not eat. If it were anyone else, they would be so depressed that they wanted to die. Something's not right. Chu Yang frowned and said, "The fragrance of this fruit seems to be spreading very quickly." The two of them turned their heads at the same time. Then, they exclaimed at the same time. They saw that in the spiritual herbal garden in the tribulation space, the spiritual herbal garden had actually grown crazily in such a short time. The two of them looked at it in a daze. It took them a while to come back to their senses. This is just the effect of the heaven and earth mystery yellow fruit's fragrance. Wasn't this too perverted? Isn't this a little too exaggerated? Previously, the sword spirit said that it would be upgraded to the earth level was just a conservative estimate. Now, it seemed that it was indeed a conservative estimate. Too conservative. Chu Yang could clearly see that the jade snow spirit ginseng had already taken shape. But, under the nourishment and infection of that fragrance, it unexpectedly started to sprout new branches. And the jade snow spirit ginseng's body was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chu Yang was stunned. He was tongue-tied. This speed is too abnormal. It takes at least 500 years for the jade snow spirit ginseng to grow one round. He turned his head in a daze and exclaimed again. He saw that the hazy fog around the heaven and earth mystery yellow fruit had reduced by one circle. There were only 5 circles now. It turned out that the tribulation space couldn't prevent the medicinal power of the heaven and earth mystery yellow fruit from dissipating. The sword spirit shouted, "Quick!" Chu Yang quivered and instantly understood the sword spirit's meaning. With a whoosh, he got out of the tribulation space and went outside. Chu Yang understood the sword spirit's meaning very well. Although the energy in the fruit couldn't be absorbed now, at this speed, it was very likely that it could be absorbed in a while. And by the time he felt that it could be absorbed, the effect would have been greatly reduced. Therefore, he had to be prepared in advance. This really couldn't be delayed at all. Once there was that tendency, he had to take it without hesitation. Perhaps there was still the danger of it exploding when he discovered it, but once it entered his mouth, it could basically be digested. Gu Duxing and the rest were waiting outside, guarding him as if they were facing a great enemy. Chu Yang had just gone out when he shouted, "Tan Tan, Elder Wu, come over quickly." At this moment, he didn't even need to send a telepathic message. So what if he was a little shocked? Time was of the essence now. There was no time to waste. Upon hearing Chu Yang's extremely anxious voice, Tan Tan, Wu Jueqing and Chu Le reacted almost subconsciously, flying over as if they were conditioned reflexes. They entered the room with a bang. "Close the door." Seeing that all 13 of them were present, Chu Yang said hurriedly, "There's no time to explain anything now. Remember, everyone, don't act rashly. Be prepared and wait with your mouths open. Don't doubt, don't ask, just wait." Everyone was stunned. What was going on? Don't move. Wait with their mouths open? What did this mean? Ji Mo really wanted to ask what was going on, but unexpectedly, Chu Yang suddenly disappeared in a flash. Mo Tianji made a prompt decision and shouted, "Everyone, if you have any questions, ask them later. Now, open your mouths and wait." Mo Tianji knew that since Chu Yang said so, he must have his reasons. Moreover, the urgency in Chu Yang's voice and the way he came and went in a hurry already showed that this was definitely an extremely important matter. Therefore, he made a decision without hesitation. Everyone's eyes bulged at the same time as they looked at Mo Tianji. "Boss is going crazy, and you, the think tank, are going crazy too." But Mo Tianji was already the first to open his mouth, his stern gaze sweeping over everyone. Chapter 1674. With a swoosh, the brothers all opened their mouths wide. Mo Qingwu, Mo Lei and Chu Le were naturally a little embarrassed, but they still opened their mouths obediently, their hearts full of doubts. Ji Mo and Luo Kedi wanted to laugh when they saw this, but they didn't dare to be rash. They could only open their mouths and hold it in until their stomachs heaved. With their mouths open, not only could they not speak, but they also couldn't laugh. Chu Yang had already returned to the tribulation space, his eyes fixed on that super magical fruit. The sword spirit was fully focused on sensing the fluctuations of the medicinal power, and he only had time to ask, "How many people?" "Or the original 11. This time, 14 including me," Chu Yang answered quickly. "When I say it's about time, start immediately. Split this fruit into 14 pieces and send them into everyone's mouths at once. Any delay may cause a huge loss of cultivation." "Understood. When I say it, there will definitely be more. When you split the fruit, it will definitely still be completely unbearable. But when you put it into your mouth, it will be almost everyone's limit," the sword spirit reminded. "Don't forget, Mo Lei and Chu Le are not even second-grade supreme martial artists. You have to be more familiar with them, so it's better for them to have less." "I know." The two of them watched helplessly as the fog of the heaven-earth mystery yellow fruit gradually dissipated, their hearts aching. But they couldn't absorb it at all. There was really nothing they could do. Until now, it's still slightly over. "It's about time." The sword spirit immediately reminded them after seeing that the fog of the heaven-earth mystery yellow fruit had already dissipated. This was the moment. Chu Yang picked up the fruit and flew out. Outside, Mo Tianji and the others were all standing with their mouths open strangely. In this situation, if an outsider accidentally came in, they would probably burst out laughing. "What's wrong with this tribulation brother?" All of them stood dumbfounded and did the same thing. What's going on? All of a sudden, an indescribable fragrance suddenly appeared in the air. Everyone had just smelled it when they saw a figure flash in front of them. Chu Yang flew out, and the next moment, everyone felt as if something was stuffed into their mouths. It was indeed just a little bit. How big was a fruit? How much could there be after it was divided into 14 portions? Just a little bit. Then, they heard Chu Yang's voice saying, "Hurry up and shut up." Patter. Everyone shut their mouths. He was about to ask, "Boss, what did you feed us?" It was gone with a roll of the tongue. How much use could such a small thing have? In the next moment, everyone experienced the effects of a little bit of fruit. A little bit of size didn't mean a little bit of foundation. This little bit of fruit was still enough to make over 10% of the martial artists in the heavenly layer explode. Immediately after, everyone could clearly feel the thing in their mouths melt in an instant, and enter their stomachs in an instant. Then, a surge of spiritual energy, as if it could split the heavens and earth, suddenly rose from their dantian. This spiritual force was extremely powerful. Even if it was Wu Jueqing. He also felt that his soul was about to scatter. Just a little bit more. Could it be that this spiritual energy was caused by that little thing? Everyone had a clear feeling that if they didn't digest it quickly, they would explode and die in the next moment. There was absolutely no luck involved. As for Chula and Mo Lei who had the weakest cultivations, Chu Yang purposely reduced the dosage by 2/3. However, the two of them still couldn't take it and sat down with flushed faces. Immediately after, the steaming fog on their bodies had already flowed out. Then, it was the group of people, including Jimo and Luo Kedi, who had slightly weaker cultivations. Chu Yang also consumed the fruit. However, as he circulated his cultivation madly to digest the medicinal effects, he observed everyone's reactions. At the same time, he hurriedly transmitted his voice to them, "Everyone, be careful. This is an extremely rare heavenly treasure. After consuming it, as long as you can take it, your cultivation will be able to increase almost limitlessly. But you must remember one thing. If it really reaches the point where you can't take it anymore, quickly open your mouth and use the circulation method in your dantian to swallow and spit out the excess spiritual energy that you can't absorb. Otherwise, your body will really explode and you will die. Remember, don't try to be brave." Chu Yang's speech was like a machine gun, 22222. However, everyone heard it. Chu Yang had originally wanted to add, "You must swallow and spit it out only when you really can't take it anymore." However, the eruption of powerful spiritual energy had finally caused his dantian to completely explode. With a boom, it rushed up. He no longer had the mental strength to say another sentence. He had already sunk into a deep and boundless state of regulating his breathing. Actually, this sentence didn't seem to be necessary. Everyone knew and understood that since Chu Yang had already done this, then this was definitely an incomparable immortal opportunity. Such a great opportunity, if it wasn't in front of death, who would be willing to swallow and spit it out? In that case, according to Jimo's words, it would be enough to make the world lose its color. It would be enough to make the sun and moon lose its light. This time, it might be the real foundation for becoming a peerless expert in the future. Everyone gritted their teeth and bitterly enduring the peerless spiritual energy in their bodies crashing left and right. They felt that their meridians were being broken open little by little. Everyone could clearly feel that the meridians in their bodies were being penetrated by the tyrannical medicinal effects. Then, they were quickly filled with incomparably pure spiritual energy, completely occupying them. Then, it continued to break through the next meridian. This process sounded simple, but it was actually extremely painful. Even with Wu Jueqing's profound cultivation and extraordinary mental state, he had to close his eyes tightly and sweat profusely. As for Chu Yang, Mo Tianji, Jiyu Duxing, and the others, it was even more unbearable. The muscles on their bodies were clearly spasming. Chu Yang only relied on his tenacious willpower and that instinct to move his body to Mo Qingwu's side. He used all his self-control to raise his hand and gently hug her slender waist. He couldn't even say a word. At this moment, he didn't seem to have the time or energy to speak at all. All of his mental strength, all of his willpower, all of his mental strength was fighting against this turbulent heat flow in his body. He must subdue it, completely tame it, completely turn it into his own power, into his own strength. At this moment, Mo Qingwu felt that she had obtained a solid support like a mountain. Her heart was filled with sweetness. Chu Yang didn't say anything, but Mo Qingwu already knew what he wanted to say. "Qingwu, hang in there. I'm right beside you. He's right beside me. Then what do I have to fear?" This time, Mo Qingwu was already almost unable to hang in there. But ever since Chu Yang's arm gently hugged her, she actually gained strength from who knows where. In a daze, she seemed to feel a lot better. Then, her physique, which was far superior to others, played a great role. Slowly, she started to absorb that violent airflow. Gradually, she entered a state where she forgot about everything around her. She could only feel that there was a strong arm around her waist, protecting her forever. Dong Wushang and Mo Leiyer's hands were tightly clasped together, the two of them maintaining synchronized breathing. Luckily, when Chu Yang was dividing the fruits, he consciously reduced Mo Leiyer's portion. Luckily, Dong Wushang was right beside Mo Leiyer. Mo Leiyer's current cultivation was the weakest among them, even slightly below Chu Le's. If not for the fact that the portion of fruits was small enough and Dong Wushang helped her bear the impact of the medicinal effects, she would really be in danger of exploding. After all, Wu Juecheng's cultivation was high and he was the most experienced. After the initial violent impact, he slowly adjusted his breathing. Although it was still uncomfortable, he was far from being as pathetic as the others. He even put a hand on Chu Le's shoulder, trying his best to use his remaining strength to help his disciple absorb the medicinal effects. Chu Le's talent was undoubtedly amazing, and her physique was also far superior to that of ordinary cultivators. But if she were to consume that little bit of fruits by herself, it would really be beyond her ability. Mo Tianji, who originally had a solemn expression, seemed to have sensed something. The stern expression on his face relaxed a little, and the thick white fog emitted from everyone's bodies gradually filled the entire room, actually showing signs of solidifying. Before this, more than 10 mid-grade supreme martial artists had joined forces to set up an extremely powerful supreme martial artist divine sense seal, which had already firmly controlled all the movements in this room. From the outside, there was only peace and tranquility. But inside the room, everyone's body was in a perilous situation. If they were not careful, they would be in danger of exploding. And once they exploded, not only would they die, it would also cause a chain reaction. No one in this room would be lucky enough to survive. They would definitely die. This time, the sword spirit also quietly revealed himself. With a solemn expression, he stood guard for everyone. He really didn't expect that just one heaven-earth arcana yellow fruit, and one that had already dissipated more than half of its spiritual energy, would actually have such a domineering effect when consumed by 14 people. It actually almost caused these 14 people to explode together. What kind of immense medicinal effects was this? His previous estimation was really too conservative. The sword spirit suddenly felt that the future was bright. Not to mention other things, just thinking about how there were so many heaven-earth arcana yellow fruits in Chu Yang's tribulation space, and how there seemed to be some unknown fruit of a higher level. And those thousands of miraculous elixirs in the elixir gardens that were improving with each passing day. Thinking about the heavy elixir and the 8 great elixirs that Chu Yang had never really revealed their true power ever since he obtained them. Thinking about the purple cloud heavenly emperor's legacy and those countless souls of the purple crystals, and holy crystals. How far could this Lord Sword Master reach in the end? Anticipation. Chapter 1675. At first, the sword spirit still thought that his future was bleak. But now, if someone told him that Chu Yang could reach the level of Shui Leihan, the sword spirit wouldn't be surprised at all. That was to be expected, alright? Even those at the level of an emperor might not be able to stop Sword Master Chu's footsteps. Then, would he eventually reach the level of that mighty person who created the tribulation sword? At this moment, the sword spirit thought of Chu Yang actually having a battle with that mighty person. He couldn't help but feel his blood boiling. If he had the chance to witness that battle with his own eyes, then his life wouldn't be in vain. Time passed bit by bit. Chu Yang and the rest were still quietly digesting the huge medicinal power. Waves of breakthrough aura burst out continuously in this room, but it was firmly suppressed in the room by the 14 unusually strong supreme martial artists' divine senses. Not a single bit leaked out, in the tribulation space. The heaven-earth arcana yellow fruit's energy, which had dissipated at the beginning, was still working. The spiritual herbal garden was moving forward as if it was running. The quality of all the spiritual herbs was improving rapidly. Such a shocking change. Even if Duke Yu came again and used all his strength, he wouldn't be able to achieve such a scene. The 3 jade snow spirit ginsengs actually jumped out of the spiritual herbs garden quietly. They were like 3 snow-white fist-sized dolls, shaking their heads and moving their hands and feet. A faint pink color actually appeared on their lifelike little faces. That was a sign that the spiritual herbs had completely taken shape, completely matured, and even had their own consciousness. If they could take another step forward, these 3 jade snow spirit ginsengs could even reach the terrifying stage of transforming into spiritual herbs, becoming spiritual existences like the sword spirit. If that was the case, Chu Yang's spiritual herbs garden would have 3 more omnipotent butlers. As long as a spiritual herb wanted a spiritual herb to mature, then, no matter what kind of spiritual herb it was, as long as it didn't exceed the level of a spiritual herb, then it could mature overnight. From a seed to a fully matured spiritual herb, it would only take a single thought from a spiritual herb. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that there were 3 more Duke Yu. It seemed that the real Duke Yu might not be able to do this. But, to make these 3 jade snow spirit ginsengs truly become spiritual herbs, it would require even more spiritual energy. Whether it could succeed in the end would depend on Chu Yang's efforts. Tribulation space. The great elixirs that Chu Yang had previously collected. It was the mysterious ice jade paste and the mysterious yang jade essence. The heavenly heart of wind, lightning, and the others were all growing at a relatively slow speed, but still visible to the naked eye. The portion that Chu Yang had originally used was silently replenished and returned back to normal. It seemed that the elites of this land of great elixirs were also taking the opportunity to quietly change their own quality. However, no one knew just how far they would go. However, no one was aware of all these changes. Because Chu Yang was working hard to improve himself, even the sword spirit was outside. Naturally, no one noticed the changes in the tribulation space. The tribulation space wasn't completely empty. There seemed to be another person. A living dead. Wu Qianqian had been kept in the tribulation space for protection ever since she had received a fatal injury. However, she had been nourished by the enormous energy of the heaven-earth mystery yellow fruit. And, she had also undergone a miraculous transformation. Previously, Chu Yang had specially prepared a private room for Wu Qianqian. It was a complete boudoir for a young girl. The tassels of the fragrant tent. Warm bedding, fragrance permeated the air, and spiritual power circulated. Wu Qianqian was still lying quietly on the bed. That head of fine black hair. She was lying on the pillow softly. The corners of her mouth were still curled up in that pitiful, faint, and satisfied smile. She was motionless. Since she had been injured last time, Chu Yang had thought of all sorts of ways to help her. He didn't know how many miraculous elixirs he had fed Wu Qianqian. He had even fed her several complete heavy pills. However, Wu Qianqian's condition showed no signs of improvement. It seemed that besides the legendary resurrection grass, there was no other way to save her. This result made Chu Yang's heart ache. Every day, he would come and feed Wu Qianqian some of the spring of life. Every once in a while, Chu Yang would stay here for a period of time to accompany this unfortunate senior sister apprentice and this unfortunate beauty. However, Wu Qianqian's condition never improved. This peerless beauty with a heart of orchid and a heart of gold was lying there with a faint smile of satisfaction on her face. Her face was deathly pale, which made the faint satisfied smile on her lips seem even more miserable. It seemed that when she had used her life to block that fatal blow for Chu Yang, the meaning of her life had been fully expressed. She was already satisfied. Every time he thought of that day, that moment, that instant, Chu Yang's heart would ache so much that he wished he was dead. But now, the situation seemed to be very different. As the huge medicinal power of the heaven-earth mystery yellow fruit spread, Wu Qianqian's originally miserable complexion actually gradually changed. She slowly became fair and tender. There was even a hint of redness. Except for the fact that she was still unconscious, she was now a beautiful beauty in a deep sleep. She slept quietly and sweetly, as if she was having an infinitely beautiful dream. That was all, outside. It had been a whole day and night in Chu Yang's room, and there was no sound of movement. The Feng and Yu couple found this strange and had come over to check it out. But when they sensed the seal set up by the combined efforts of 14 peak supreme martial artists, they understood what was going on. They didn't choose to force their way in. Instead, they stood quietly at the door, guarding. Something extremely important must have happened inside. Ling Muyang had sent out all the existing experts of the Ling clan to find out about the law enforcement officers, especially the Dharma Supreme himself. Then, he tried his best to collect all the corpses and cremate them, trying his best to prevent the outbreak of the plague. Other than the continuous influx of outsiders, peace seemed to have been restored. A delicate balance. A delicate peace. Everything was like the last calm before the storm. Many outsiders who came later still had the desire to participate in the Tianding Grand Meeting. They were still dreaming of joining the ranks of the law enforcement officers and making a great leap. They didn't know that the Tianding Grand Meeting that they had longed for had long ceased to exist in name. This wasn't strange. It was just that this heavenly continent was a little too vast. Although there were beacons everywhere, but those who didn't know the inside story were still the majority. After all, the martial world was chaotic. Without chaos, how could it be called the martial world? However, after these people entered the capital and found out the whole story, they realized that the situation had deteriorated to such an extent. Even if they wanted to withdraw or return home, it had already become an impossible dream. For a moment, everyone stomped their feet and thumped their chests. They didn't expect that they would plunge headfirst into a huge whirlpool when they came here full of enthusiasm. They were in a situation of certain death. Oh my God. Oh my God. Open your eyes and take a look. In the capital. The eyes of the people of the various big clans had completely turned red. They had been preparing for war all day and all night. Everyone knew that the law enforcement officers were now outside, eyeing covetously. They were crazily hunting down the remaining people of the big clans in the entire continent. They were just waiting for them to think that they had completed their mission outside. When the people of the big clans that they wanted to kill were all dead, their vanguard. They would point straight at the capital. By then, the capital would become the site of the tragic final battle. Or, they were already at the assembly point, outside the capital. But where was the real main force of the law enforcement officers? It had completely become an unsolvable mystery now. The people of the big clans in the capital were all hoping that this final battle would come sooner. Such a painful and torturous feeling really made them feel like they were waiting for death. It was too unbearable. Death might not be that scary. Perhaps it would happen in the blink of an eye. But waiting for death was the most unbearable. Every day felt like a year. But as unbearable as it was, they also secretly hoped that the day would come as late as possible. It was best that it didn't come. That was because he still had his family, his brothers, and his loved ones outside. If the main force of the law enforcement officers really came, it would mean that all those people were dead and there would be no more hope. That would be a very painful thing. Time passed by quietly. Even Yi Chen and the other higher-ups were getting more and more anxious. What exactly was the Dharma Supreme doing? What exactly was his purpose? Why was there no news at all now? On the afternoon of the second day after Chu Yang and the others went into seclusion, there was suddenly new news. The law enforcement officers are starting to gather from all over the world towards the capital. The blood pairs of the law enforcement officers are quickly gathering towards the capital. The slogan of the law enforcement officers has been spread. Bloodbath in the capital. This shocking news swept through the entire capital like a hurricane. Everyone who heard this news had their faces turn pale. Bloodbath in the capital. It was actually such an extreme and bloody slogan. In the capital, this news spread like a plague. Those who originally surrendered because they couldn't win were now in complete despair. There was no other way except to fight to the death. Now, the world outside was completely under the control of the law enforcement officers. All those who dared to resist had already become corpses. It was already difficult to estimate how many people died in this battle. But it was definitely an astronomical number. And what everyone really didn't expect was, the Dharma Supreme was actually doing this. He sent out a huge amount of manpower and resources to record the results and casualties of this battle and to make a complete tally. And he even announced the final bloody results of this insane massacre to the world. Such a strange mentality and action made everyone gnash their teeth in hatred. Moreover, it was abnormally incomprehensible. There had never been such a crazed person since ancient times. The Dharma Supreme even issued a proclamation for this purge of the world. The event in Beijing on the 20th was postponed. I was at home, but I still had to go to Pride's publishing house in Fujian on the 28th. I had no choice but to cancel the ticket from Beijing to Fujian and change it to Jinan. Chapter 1676. The Dharma Supreme's proclamation infuriated everyone in the city. I have been in charge of the heaven for more than 13,000 years. I have always worked hard to bring benefits to the world. I have a clear conscience. Now that the extraterrestrial demons are causing trouble, the big clans and martial artists of the pugilistic world are following them. I do not wish to kill too many people, but for the sake of the world, I can only wield my knife and cleanse the world. This is a helpless action, but for the 100,000 years of glory of the law enforcement officers, billions of lives in the heaven, I have no choice but to do so. My heart aches and regrets. In this battle, the world has changed, and the sun and moon have lost their light. After 20 days, the results are beginning to show. In the Southeast War Zone, a total of 437,580 traitors of the Xiao clan were killed. In addition, more than 335,500 traitors of the pugilistic world were killed. They were burned to the ground. The law enforcement officers' headquarters lost 373,000 traitors, listed in the law enforcement officers' shrine. The Southeast War Zone lost 17,000 blood pairs, and all the compensation has been paid. In the Southwest War Zone, a total of 330,000 traitors were killed. Wherever the law enforcement officers pointed their weapons, all the traitors were killed. The Southwest Law Enforcement Officers' headquarters lost more than 300,000 people. The losses in this battle are huge. For the sake of the heaven, our loyal souls will never die. In the Northwest War Zone, more than 70,000 traitors were killed. The law enforcement officers' headquarters lost more than 20,000 traitors. In the North War Zone, a total of 273,000 traitors were killed. The law enforcement officers' headquarters lost 108,000 traitors. In the South War Zone, a total of 103,400 traitors were killed. The law enforcement officers' headquarters lost 530,000 traitors. The law enforcement officers in the South perished together with the enemy. Our loyal souls will never die. In the West War Zone, more than 500,000 traitors were killed. The law enforcement officers' headquarters lost 230,000 traitors. One of them is a 2nd grade supreme martial artist, and an 8th grade supreme martial artist. Our loyal souls will never die. In the East War Zone, more than 850,000 traitors were killed. About 1 million troops were invested in this battle, and more than half of the law enforcement officers were killed. Our loyal souls will never die. In the Northeast War Zone, more than 710,000 traitors were killed, and the law enforcement officers' headquarters lost 475,000 traitors. Our loyal souls will never die. We, the law enforcement heroes, have killed all the traitors in the periphery. Currently, only the capital is still occupied by the extraterrestrial demons. We are here for the big picture, to cleanse the capital with blood and rule the world. There may have been accidental injuries, but we had no choice. Where the vanguard is pointed is the capital. Ancestors, please bless and protect me. Please bless me to succeed in this battle and return the heavenly layer a clear sky and bright sun. Battle reports from the law enforcement officers were constantly transmitted to the capital. They were like sharp knives that stabbed into the chests of the remaining members of the big clans. For a moment, the sound of cursing filled the air. The Dharma Supreme's irresponsible remarks, pointing at a deer as a horse, and inverting right and wrong, had infuriated everyone in the Poison tribe. From a certain perspective, it had instead become a great mobilization before the battle for the poison tribe. Too shameless. Too despicable. You've already done all the bad things, yet you're actually standing on the side of justice, standing on the moral high ground, framing others, suppressing others. This was intolerable. So many people had already died. It was impossible for them to let this matter rest. Moreover, the huge amount of data contained in the battle report made everyone's heart turn cold, and they broke out in cold sweat. So cruel. However, this battle was only recorded by the enforcers. More than 1 million Jianghu experts in the heavenly layer had died. More than 1 million people. This was such a huge number. It was really a number of people. Everyone who heard this news broke out in cold sweat, and they were speechless for a long time. Now, after the Dharma Supreme commanded his law enforcement officers to kill 1 million people, he actually wanted to continue the bloodbath in the capital. One must know that the current capital, not counting the ordinary citizens, the number of Jianghu experts alone was already more than 10 million. And the bloodbath in the capital meant to kill all these 10 million people. The Dharma Supreme's actions could only be described as absolute madness. Comparing a steady wise man and a crazy wise man, the latter was definitely more than 10 times more dangerous than the former. A steady wise man would have such concerns, and there would be limitations in his actions. However, a crazy wise man would not have any more concerns. Therefore, the lethality and the disaster that he could cause would be 10 times, or even 100 times more. The disasters that the Dharma Supreme brought about were already the best explanation. When a wise man did good, he could bring blessings to the world. When a wise man did evil, he could bring chaos to the world. A crazy wise man was really too scary. The law enforcement officer's army in the southeast has already been assembled and is on the way. No one would have thought that the law enforcement officers in the southeast would be the first to be assembled. The law enforcement officer's army has burned down all the mountains along the way. Anyone who stands in their way will be eradicated without question. All the martial arts clans along the way have been forcibly recruited into the army. Those who dare to disobey will be considered to be subordinate to the big clans. The only outcome is the extermination of their entire clan. The follow-up information became more and more detailed. The law enforcement officer's army in the south has also been assembled and is about to move north. The army in the west has been assembled and is ready to move out. Each piece of news was like a talisman of death, bombarding the hearts of the big clans wave after wave. The law enforcement officer's army swept over like rolling waves, and their momentum was unparalleled. Looking from the tallest mountain outside the capital, one could only see billowing smoke and dust everywhere, covering the sky and earth. The army had yet to arrive, but their momentum was already overwhelming. The momentum of gaining the upper hand by a show of strength was already formed. The Dharma Supreme actually ordered all the law enforcement officers and blood pairs in the world as an army. The most admirable thing is that he actually managed to organize and form them. When martial artists become qualified soldiers, the combat power of this army will be difficult to estimate. Diwu Qingru stood at the top of the mountain, his expression solemn. The formation of this law enforcement officer's army is completely built on the foundation of high death pressure. Zhuge Tsungqiong, who was standing beside him, looked defeated. His eyes shone with extreme hatred as he said hatefully, when the army was first formed, the Dharma Supreme had already passed down the order that all the armies must strictly implement militarized management. If one disobeyed, kill one. If 10,000 disobeyed, kill 10,000. The order must be strictly enforced. Those who disobeyed will be killed without mercy. In addition, there was another order that was extremely out of line. All the law enforcement officers in the world are to gather outside the capital. When the time comes, if any law enforcement officers are unable to form an army, the rest of the law enforcement officers can gather and slaughter them. Along the way, because they disobeyed the order, the number of law enforcement officers and blood pairs who were killed must be more than 100,000. Only then can such an army be formed. This is madness. Terrifying madness. Terrifying madness. Diwu Qingru took a deep breath. Since time immemorial, it seemed that only the Dharma Supreme could do something like this. If they were unable to form an army, The rest of the law enforcement officers would gather and slaughter them. One must know that this was not just 10 or 100 people, but the heads of as many as 1,000,000 people. The Dharma Supreme could actually kill whenever he wanted without the slightest hesitation. This had already exceeded the limits of the so-called decisiveness in killing. It was basically no longer treating lives as lives. The Dharma Supreme now basically treats this world as a slaughterhouse. In his eyes, the lives of all the living beings in the world are probably just some breathing corpses or insignificant ants. What harm is there in death? Zhuge Tsangqiong let out a long sigh. Yes, all the living beings in the world and the heroes of the martial world are already his targets of destruction. This is something he has already made very clear. Diwu Qingru said, even the law enforcement officers whom he has led for more than 10,000 years, the law enforcement officers who see him as a god, they are also his targets of destruction. Or perhaps, all the living beings on this continent are his targets of destruction. At the side, Chen Yingfeng said coldly, this piece of land will be the last place that the Dharma Supreme will try his best to destroy. After destroying this place, there will no longer be any forces in the world that will dare to go against him, nor will there be any forces that can go against him. Qiu Yu frowned and turned to look at Chen Yingfeng. She said indifferently, Chen Yingfeng, you seem very excited. Are you looking forward to the arrival of the great battle? Chen Yingfeng smiled bitterly. Why wouldn't I? Our old Chen clan is almost all dead now. What does it matter if a few more people die in this world? Xiao Chenyu sneered. Chen Yingfeng, your family is all dead. Do other people's families also have to be dead for you to be satisfied? Chen Yingfeng sneered. I already have nothing left to live for. You can say whatever you want. Shut up. Yi Chen shouted angrily. Even if you have nothing left to live for, don't tell me you don't even want to take revenge. Chen Yingfeng snorted with a defeated expression. He lowered his head and didn't say another word. The Dharma Supreme has come with an overwhelming force this time. How should we deal with it? The war is dangerous now. It is the time for everyone to come up with ideas or discuss it. We might be able to come up with a good countermeasure. Yi Chunchen's voice sounded a little tired. The only thing we can do now is to gather all the martial forces in the capital into an army. Otherwise, it will be difficult to resist, said Zhuge Tsangqiong. As for this section, I've been doing it for the past few days. However, we don't have the high pressure of death on the Dharma Supreme side, so the effect isn't very good. Diwu Qingru sighed softly. As a veteran of the battlefield, how could he not know how terrifying an army formed by martial artists was? However, the difficulty of forming such an army was equally high. Without the high pressure of death on the Dharma Supreme, there was really no effective method. At least, it wouldn't be effective in the short term. Shapauxiao's injuries had more or less recovered by now. He said, in the past few days, there hasn't been any movement on the Tribulation Swordmaster's side. Instead, it is Ling Muyang who is actively preparing for war. I think that immature Tribulation Swordmaster has long been scared out of his wits by the Dharma Supreme. 90% of his cultivation was obtained through external help. Facing such a great battle in the future, escaping is the most normal thing to do. Chen Yingfeng said sarcastically. There was an earthquake in Lai Wu yesterday. But I was asleep during the earthquake and didn't feel anything. I missed it. It was only today that I found out. I even argued with others until my face turned red. Where was the earthquake? Where was the earthquake? There was none. Chapter 1677. Chen Yingfeng sneered and said in a sarcastic tone, and those few people around the Tribulation Swordmaster, they are all little hairs that have yet to shed all their hair. Not to mention not doing anything, even if they were to do anything, would they be able to repel the Dharma Supreme's enforcers? What legend of tribulation, bah! Xiao Chenyu looked at Chen Yingfeng coldly and said, Yingfeng, are you crazy too? You can say anything about Chu Yang and his brothers, but can you blaspheme the words legend of tribulation? Everyone else glared at him. Qiu He and She roared and almost wanted to rush up and beat Chen Yingfeng up. Legend of Tribulation included their father. Chen Yingfeng's words definitely angered everyone. Yi Chen said majestically, "Stop quarreling, go back and prepare to divide the forces in the city. Then we'll gather experts to lead us. Whether we live or die, let's fight to the death. At this juncture, we'll die if we don't fight. Fight with all your might and still have a chance." Chen Yingfeng laughed bitterly and took the lead to leave. He didn't even look back. "This is the approximate distribution of all the forces in the city. I've already divided them into teams in 8 directions. Now, we just lack a capable leader." Diwu Qingru handed over a piece of paper with the division of forces written on it. It even included how many people there were in each area, how much combat power they could form, who to contact, who to lead, who had the highest prestige, who had the most influence, who had the most financial resources, how to form an army, how to form a team to unleash stronger combat power, and so on. There were clear instructions. While everyone was flying around like headless flies, Diwu Qingru had already done all this with the weak strength of his clan. His painstaking efforts were evident. One must know that in such a short period of time, how difficult it was to analyze all the forces in the world in a clear and logical manner. Diwu Qingru definitely didn't sleep in these few days. "Thank you for your hard work, Clan Master Diwu." Yi Chen took a look at it and couldn't help but be moved. The Yi clan was the one with the most complete strength among all the clans. It was also the local tyrant here, but there was no targeted strategy at all. Compared to Diwu Qingru's actions, the difference was obvious. Even though Yi Chen, he couldn't help but feel extremely ashamed. At the moment of life and death, for a chance of survival, I'm just doing my best. Diwu Qingru smiled freely. Although the final outcome may still end in tragedy, no matter what, we can't just sit and wait. Only by doing our best can we die without regret. Yes, we can't sit and sit and sit. Only by doing your best can you die without regret. Yi Chen repeated softly, somewhat lost in thought. Soon after, the patriarchs read through the paper and flew away with grave expressions on their faces. Now, it was a critical moment. Time waits for no man. He had to take immediate action. He had to take action as soon as possible. Or they could have a little more chance. When Diwu Qingru left, Yi Chen was still standing alone at the highest point of the platform with his hands behind his back. High up in the sky, the strong winds howled and blew at Yi Chen's black clothes and robes, almost dispersing him into nothingness. A bleak and desolate aura emanated from his body. Diwu Qingru only glanced at it. He sighed inwardly, feeling his heart heavy. How he wished he could kick Yi Chen down the mountain. Because he could already tell that Yi Chen had lost all hope. Yi Chen and the Yi clan were already the ones with the highest cultivation and the most complete strength among the allied forces. Yet, even he had lost all hope. Although he still had the mentality to fight to the death, he no longer had the confidence to win. Yi Chen was currently the one with the highest prestige and status among the big clans. Following a commander who had no confidence in the upcoming battle, how could they fight this battle? The outcome of this battle was already obvious. Diwu Qingru sighed silently and ran down the mountain like a shooting star. He ran toward the capital city. He only wanted to see Chu Yang now. He really wanted to ask, "Chu Yang, Tribulation Swordmaster, do you have any other ideas?" Most importantly, Diwu Qingru absolutely believed that even if the Yi clan gave up, Yi Chen gave up, and everyone else in the world gave up, Chu Yang would never give up. Diwu Qingru had never doubted this. He had always believed in it. Tribulation Swordmaster had always been a legend. A legend was one who created glory in many impossible situations. Back then, when Chu Yang went to Iron Cloud Nation, wasn't the situation similar to now? Iron Cloud back then was just like the capital city now. And the Dharma Supreme now was more or less the same as when he led Great Zhao back then. The advantages and disadvantages of both sides could be seen at a glance. Everyone thought that Iron Cloud was bound to lose. If it were anyone else, they might not have much confidence and might have given up long ago. But Chu Yang jumped up and down and turned the situation around. He won the battle that was impossible to win. Diwu Qingru was full of admiration for such a fighting spirit that would never give up on any opportunity. Honestly speaking, if I were in Chu Yang's position at that time, let alone succeeding in my struggle, I'm afraid I wouldn't even have the thought of struggling. Therefore, when Diwu Qingru went down the mountain this time, he went straight to Chu Yang's base. To be honest, Diwu Qingru also had a lot of ideas. He wanted to see how Sword Master Chu would jump up and down this time. Could he really jump up and down with hope? Even if he couldn't jump up in the end and could die together with Tribulation Sword Master, Diwu Qingru felt that he had nothing to regret. Soon, he arrived at the inn. Ling Muyang's fierce face as a guard gave Diwu Qingru a fright. Oh my god! This Sword Master Chu is too arrogant. He actually let the old ancestor of the Ling clan guard the door here? You're looking for Chu Yang? He's in seclusion now. Ling Muyang said, I'm here to guard, what's with your look? Do you think I'm a waiter? Seeing Diwu Qingru's expression, Ling Muyang was a little angry and amused. He's in seclusion now? Diwu Qingru was delighted. The expression on his face just now was of course faked. If he didn't have a surprised expression when he saw Ling Muyang as a guard, this old ancestor of the Ling clan would probably be angrier. Then he thought, Chu Yang didn't go into seclusion earlier or later, but chose to do so now. It's definitely a good thing. Then he asked, how many days has Sword Master Chu been in seclusion? 2 days and 2 nights. Ling Muyang's impression of Diwu Qingru was quite good. In his opinion, there weren't many people in big clans who could do things, but this Diwu Qingru was definitely a capable one. Although his cultivation was more or less low now, his scheming was really unparalleled in the world. 2 days. That's good. 2 days of seclusion, very good. Diwu Qingru heaved a sigh of relief and said sincerely, the longer, the better. As long as he comes out before the law enforcement officers attack. Ling Muyang was a little surprised by Diwu Qingru's reaction. Diwu Qingru's confidence in Chu Yang, the Tribulation Sword Master, is a little too much. It seems that even I don't have as much confidence as him, since Chu Yang is in seclusion. Then I'll talk to Mo Tianji. We can be considered old friends. Diwu Qingru smiled. Mo Tianji. Mo Tianji is also in seclusion. They are in seclusion together. Ling Muyang rolled his eyes. All the Tribulation brothers are in seclusion together, as well as Wu Jueqing and that Saint King from the 3 Stars Divine clan called Tan Tan, Chu Yang's junior brother. They are in seclusion together. Really? Then it means that things have taken a turn for the better. It's a good thing. Diwu Qingru was completely excited. With the sudden turn of the crisis, Diwu Qingru decided not to leave. He sat down here, ordered a few dishes and drank with Ling Muyang. The most important thing now was still here. As long as Chu Yang could hold on, the Heavens continent would be fine in the end. As for the more than 10 million Jianghu experts in the capital, as well as the remaining forces of the big clans, in Diwu Qingru's eyes, they were still just cannon fodder. Since the Dharma Supreme said to purge, then it must be purged. Maybe they couldn't purge the Tribulation Sword Master, but to purge the other people, with the current strength of the Dharma Supreme and the law enforcement officers, it was no pressure at all. What are Yi Chen and the others doing now? Ling Muyang asked. They are also preparing for war. Diwu Qingru was still very respectful to this old ancestor of the Ling clan, so he answered very respectfully. Preparing for war. There was a faint pain in the depths of Ling Muyang's eyes, but he snorted and said, a bunch of ungrateful people, short-sighted people. What's the use of preparing for war? Hoping for a fluke? After scolding, he didn't wait for Diwu Qingru to speak and sighed first. Sigh. This war. In the end, there is no right or wrong. After all, we are brothers for more than 10,000 years. Diwu Qingru knew that he was in a complicated mood at the moment. He just smiled and drank with him, but didn't bring the topic to the ancestors of the Zhu clan. Ling Muyang sighed deeply. Time passed quietly. The capital was already in a state of panic, and every bush and tree was an enemy. Although the main force of the law enforcement officers hadn't arrived yet, the people in the city could already clearly feel that there seemed to be countless strong pressure coming from all directions, sweeping towards the capital. For a moment, everyone felt a kind of pressure that made it hard for them to breathe. Under the call of the big clans, the majority of the Jianghu experts who had resolutely joined the war this time were in the majority. Only a few people still wanted to wait and see what would happen next, but these people were instantly turned into hundreds of thousands of corpses under Yi Chunchen's command. The corpse-dissolving powder was scattered over, and wisps of green smoke rose in spirals. Chapter 1678. Hundreds of thousands of people turned into corpses with just one order. For a moment, the air above the capital was filled with the smell of corpses, lingering for a long time. The smell made one want to vomit. Before the army of the Dharma Supreme arrived, this place had already been cleaned up. This massacre made all the martial artists of the pugilistic world keep quiet out of fear. They were also much more obedient to the orders issued by the big clans. The effect was immediate. There wasn't even a trace of wind above the capital. It was already late autumn, but the weather was unbelievably hot. The air seemed to have stopped flowing. On the streets, everyone came and went hurriedly, not saying a word, with a sullen face. The expression on their faces was like that of walking zombies. Their eyes emitted green light and their expressions were ferocious. It was as if they didn't like anyone and couldn't wait to kill them all. It was finally the morning of the third day of Chuyang and the rest's seclusion. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the entire capital. "They're here, they're here, they're really here." Someone shouted on the streets, his voice sounding as if he was about to cry. "They're here, they're here. The army of law enforcement officers is here." More people also shouted. Some of them had decent cultivation, but when they heard this news, they were so scared that they sat down on the ground. The law enforcement officers were here, the end of the world was finally here. Everyone looked up at the same time. In the sky above the capital, clouds of smoke slowly floated in from all directions. Ling Muyang was about to go out and check the situation when Feng Yuro came out with a swoosh. She instructed simply, "I'll go and check the situation. You pay attention to this place and ensure that it's safe and quiet. Don't let anything disturb the people in seclusion." Ling Muyang was naturally very respectful in front of Feng Yuro. He bowed and replied, "Yes." Before he finished his sentence, Feng Yuro had already disappeared. It was only at this moment that they heard a swoosh in the air. A clear space crack appeared in front of them. It was Feng Yuro who flew rapidly and directly cut through the space. Swoosh. Feng Yuro appeared on the highest peak of the capital and looked around. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. The law enforcement officers and the Dharma Supreme were really here. Now, although she still couldn't see any law enforcement officers. However, thousands of miles away, one could clearly see thick smoke rising from all directions. It was as if the wind and clouds in the sky had suddenly gathered from all directions and were surging towards this location. An extremely evil and dark murderous aura appeared in the distance, even though it was thousands of miles away. It could also be easily distinguished. The Dharma Supreme's law enforcement officer army would need at least several million soldiers to create such a shocking effect. Looking at the thick smoke and dust that gradually covered the entire sky, Feng Yuro already knew that the Dharma Supreme was about to encounter something that could burn. All of them were ignited. Not only were there houses, residences, and farmlands, but there were also mountains and dense forests. Everything that could have been set ablaze. "Dharma Supreme, why have you become so extreme?" A hint of pain appeared in Feng Yuro's eyes as she muttered to herself, "The original you had a greater purpose. Treating the master of the calamity sword is against the purpose of the law enforcers of the past. But you are not a heartless person. Why are you so extreme now? You've implemented many methods. The measures made it clear that you were doing this for the good of the continent. But now, why did it become like this? Even if it was due to the influence of the extraterrestrial demon, it shouldn't be like this. Just to vent the grievances and pain in your heart, you have to massacre the world like this." Feng Yuro stood there in a daze. Her heart was filled with questions, but she did not know how to vent them or who to ask. Thinking of the countless lives that must have been lost behind the black smoke, she could not help but feel a sharp pain in her heart. This was originally a harmonious world that she, her husband, and the countless law enforcement officers of the past generations had painstakingly built for tens of thousands of years. But it was destroyed by that person just like that. Dharma Supreme, Foam Euro shouted. Her voice was like a sharp arrow that pierced through the sky and spread far and wide, turning into rolling thunder in the sky. At the same time, it exploded above the heads of everyone within thousands of miles. Dharma Supreme, come out and answer me. Foam Euro shouted. I'm Foam Euro. Down below, everyone's hearts were shaken. Foam Euro. Supremacy Foam and Supremacy U, the guardians of the heavens. Foam Euro and Supremacy U could be said to be the second most powerful law enforcement officers after the Dharma Supreme. I don't care if you are Dongfang Badao or Diwu Chochang. Come out. Come out right now. Foam Euro shouted. You dare to make such a big fuss, but you don't even have the courage to talk to me. Come out. In the sky, following Foam Euro's roar, a series of rolling thunder also exploded at the same time, roaring in the sky. However, the rolling thunder was still unable to suppress Foam Euro's voice. The sky was filled with clouds and dust, and streaks of lightning flashed through it. Swoosh swoosh swoosh, Yi Chen Chen and the others also flew up the mountain and stood behind Foam Euro. Foam Euro ignored the arrival of this group of people, as if she did not notice them. Everyone also did not speak, only standing respectfully behind her. After a long time, an elegant voice drifted over from afar. It was the Dharma Supreme's voice. Supremacy Foam, long time no see. Foam Euro shouted, tell me, what do you want? What will make you stop? The Dharma Supreme's deep laughter sounded. Supremacy, you are asking the wrong person when you ask me what will make me stop. The heavens have already been invaded by the extraterrestrial demons. As the Dharma Supreme, it is my duty to lead the law enforcement officers to purge the demonic aura. Even if I have to pay a huge price for it, I will not hesitate. I know that Supremacy Foam is compassionate and benevolent. However, I hope that Supremacy Foam will not continue to persuade me. It is meaningless. Foam Euro's delicate body trembled slightly. She said sternly, Dharma Supreme, a real man should have a clear conscience when doing things. Have you ever been embarrassed to confuse right and wrong like this? The Dharma Supreme said quietly, the weather today is not very good, it is going to rain soon. Supremacy Foam, the wind and rain are cold, please take care of yourself. At this point, there was actually no more sound. No matter what Foam Euro said, the Dharma Supreme's voice did not appear again. After a while, a thunderclap exploded, and bean-sized raindrops fell. Very quickly, a thin layer of dust and smoke splashed up from the ground, which was then washed away by the heavy rain. The wind whistled fiercely. Between heaven and earth, it was a vast expanse. In the clouds above, bolts of lightning crisscrossed, forming a series of thunderclaps that rumbled continuously. Between heaven and earth, it became darker and darker, until one could not even see one's own fingers. Only at the moment when the thunderclaps flashed, could this world that had completely turned into darkness, as well as the rain that was pouring down crazily. It was as if the heavens were also enraged by this extremely cruel massacre in the human world. Foam Euro and the rest stood at the top of the mountain, drenched from head to toe by the rain. Their bodies were cold, and even their hearts were icy cold. Supremacy Foam, Yi Chen Chen called out in a dry voice. Let's fight. No matter what we say now, there is no meaning. Foam Euro did not turn back. She only said quietly, regardless of life or death, victory or defeat, we already have no other choice. We can only fight. Yi Chen Chen, Xiao Chenyu and the rest had a mournful look on their faces. Suddenly, deafening shouts came from all directions at the same time. It was all the law enforcement officers shouting at the top of their lungs at the same time. Massacre do! Massacre do! Massacre do! Such a shocking sound seemed to have caused the entire place to tremble. Even the mountain under everyone's feet was trembling. Crashing sounds could be heard as rocks continuously rolled down. Yi Chen Chen and the rest turned even paler. A voice among the deafening shouts spread clearly over thousands of miles of mountains and rivers. The Dharma Supreme. He recited, smoke and beacons everywhere, staining the martial world with blood. If the heavens don't let me make the decision, what's wrong with massacring the human world? Foam Euro said sternly, let's go. Her slim figure was the first to flash in the sky. At the moment when the lightning suddenly lit up the world, Foam Euro's slim figure had already disappeared into the rain and fog. Morning. The heavy rain showed no signs of stopping. Instead, it became more and more intense. The earth rumbled with the pitter-patter of the rain, the entire sky was still pitch black. The law enforcement officers' army had already set up camp 150 miles away from the capital city. That murderous atmosphere that was full of destruction was still pressing down heavily. The capital city was in chaos. Cries filled the air, as if doomsday was coming. After an unknown period of time, the heavy rain continued, lightning and thunder continued to rumble. A voice, like the clashing of metal, was sonorous and powerful. Attack! Break through the north gate of the capital first. Obviously, the law enforcement officers couldn't wait any longer. Even though the rain was pouring down, they still insisted on attacking and massacring the capital. A series of shrill cries sounded continuously. The tens of thousands of experts on the law enforcement officers' side also attacked at lightning speed. In the midst of the heavy rain, each of them was like a malicious spirit coming out of seclusion. They actually launched the first wave of attack just like that. The law enforcement officers had traveled a long and arduous journey here and were facing a heavy rain that was rarely seen in hundreds of years. The Dharma Supreme actually didn't even reorganize the troops and didn't give them much time to rest, launching the attack early on. Let me fight the first battle. Xiao Chenyu shouted and took the lead to charge out. Behind him were the few remaining experts of the Xiao clan and hundreds of thousands of martial world expert. Everyone looked sorrowful and indignant, but their expressions were resolute. They surged out of the north gate like a tidal wave, brazenly facing the law enforcement officers' army. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.